welcome to come on in and sit together. All right, Dallas, did I hear the little, we are live? If you're watching at home, ladies and gentlemen, we're just segueing from the previous item to tonight's commission meeting. Looks like we have everyone here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and call this regularly scheduled March 22nd meeting to order. We do apologize for the slight delay. We had a meeting right before this that ran a little bit long, but we're going to go ahead and get started. We do want to continue to note Commissioner Coleman's absence. We're wishing him a speedy recovery. Hope to see him back on this dais soon. And we are still engaged in a hybrid meeting where we have Zoom and we have live audience members at the same time. So we're getting pretty good at it. But I do want to let you know that there will be a 30-second delay between our vote that happens here, our conversation that happens here, and the folks watching at home. So we'll make sure we give plenty of time for those folks who want to call in and speak to an item to have the opportunity to do so. I'd like to begin tonight by asking for approval of the agenda. I have no changes. I have a motion from Commissioner Norfleet, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Are there any questions or comments on the agenda as it was published from the dais? Seeing none, we're going to put our phone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just started tonight's regularly scheduled commission meeting. We have a motion probably second on the floor to adopt the agenda as it was published with no amendments, no changes. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on the motion on the floor to approve the agenda with no changes, now is the appropriate time to do so. All you need to accomplish that is dial the number that's on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, simply tap the little hand symbol that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment, then we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have anybody here live who'd like to address the commission on the motion on the floor? Seeing none. Dallas, do we have any virtual hands raised? Seeing none, we'll come back. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. I'd like to invite Pastor Rocky McKinley from Destiny Community Church tonight to give us tonight's invocation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're zooming in tonight and you just like to bow your head, that is perfectly acceptable. If you're here in the audience, we're going to ask you to stand for the invocation and remain standing after the invocation for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Rocky, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Let us pray. Oh, Father, we humbly come before you tonight, asking for your guidance, recognizing that all authority is appointed by you. We humbly submit to your guidance through this meeting. Lord, we pray that you would give the commission, Lord, guidance on issues as it pertains to Newberry. Guide them to do what is right for this city, Lord. And Lord, we lift up special prayer to you tonight for Ricky Coleman. Lord, we miss him being on this dais. Lord, we pray that you would continue to heal his body. We praise you for the reports that we're receiving. And Lord, we just ask that you would expedite his recovery, Lord. We pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Mr. Clark.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Rocky, for those words. All right, we have one item under presentation tonight. This is a proclamation recognizing one of Newberry's own, Bethany Keller. So I'd like to read this proclamation into the record. And then if you would, Bethany, if you'll meet us here at the dais, we'll present it to you. We are so incredibly proud of you for wanting to do this. You continue to blow us away with your kindness, which is a quote from your mother and father. Whereas Bethany Keller, a senior at Newberry High School, has served her school as a member of Future Farmers of America for 4 years. And whereas in 2020, Bethany lost her grandfather to cancer, thereby learning firsthand the pain of that disease. When she learned a student at Santa Fe High School had been diagnosed with osteosarcoma, she saw a chance to make a difference and ease that pain for another. And whereas, with a generosity of heart seldom seen, Bethany spoke with her parents and grandmother about donating the proceeds from the sale of her main cross steer, Hokie, during the Alachua County Youth Fair and Livestock Show in March of 2021 to Nathan Blair, a Santa Fe High School graduate, for his medical bills. And whereas during the fair, Bethany placed top 3 in her class, and she reached out to the community for donations toward Hoki's auction price, with all proceeds going to Nathan and his family. To date, they have raised over $16,100. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Mayor Jordan Marlowe, do hereby commend Bethany Keller for her outstanding service, kindness, compassion, generosity, love, and integrity to her fellow student and friend. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 22nd day of March 2021, and it has been attested by the clerk of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, Miss Judy S. Rice. Ms. Bethany, you make us all proud. We appreciate you and the model that you have given to Newberry and the world. If you would please join me down here. All of this with it. Let's see. You're gonna hold it on that hand. We'll first, I'll hold it for you. You come right here. So we have this for you tonight. You are only the second recipient of the Mayor's Choice Award. I only give this out to people who really, really do the city of Newberry proud. And this is for you, if you can hold that way. And we do appreciate you and what you did for your friends. Thank you so much. Now it is obviously, we don't want to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to address the commission, if you wanted to say anything to your friend, but you don't have to. Does mom or dad want to say anything? Well, you guys have raised a wonderful young woman, so.
Thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely. You guys have a wonderful night. We'll see you in school tomorrow. Oh, I'm just kidding. It's spring break.
Don't look too hard.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the point in our agenda where we set aside public announcements. Your commission likes to hear from you, and they want to give you an opportunity to address them early on in the evening. These are 2-minute public announcements. They're meant for the non-controversial type. So we'll go to that now. We'll put our phone number up, Dallas. We'll make sure we give everybody the opportunity to call in. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we've come to a point in our agenda where we have public comment. If you'd like to call in and address the commission, you have the opportunity to do so now on any item. Doesn't have to be on the agenda. We'd love to hear from you. If you are zooming in, and you have the opportunity to do that just by dialing the phone number on your screen, that'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look to the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol that lets us know you'd like to address the commission. And we're going to make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We'll start with live comment, and then we'll go to virtual comment. Do I have any members of the public who'd like to address the commission live in the chamber? Come on down, sir.
Rocky McKinley, Destiny Community Church. Just wanted to make an announcement about Saturday, April 3rd. Last year, we had to cancel the Easter extravaganza that we usually do at our church, free to the public. This year, it is in full force. And that is Saturday, April 3rd, the day before Easter, at the DCC property on West Newberry Road. And it starts at 11. Egg hunt starts at noon with age appropriate sections for all the age groups. I do have one other announcement, if I may. I think that would probably be pleasing to the commission. I've got really good news for you. 7.5 years ago, our church opened a coffee shop in Newberry. And through the effects of COVID and other things, we just saw where it just wasn't accomplishing what it set out to do, which was send money to the mission field. So we decided that we were going to get out of the coffee business. One of our faithful customers stepped up and said, we love what's happening here and we don't want to see it go away. And so I'm happy to tell you that Manny and Hilda Hernandez are going to be taking over ownership of the blend. You would know Manny from Beautiful Gardens of Florida Incorporated, and he is such a great asset to our community. The mission will stay the same, coffee with a cause, but this time around, they're going to be focusing on really blessing the city of Newberry through various ways, as they already do through his other business. And
That is awesome.
so the blend, as far as I know, the only time that it will shut down is he wants to do a few renovations to the building. And I've seen the plans for that, and I think it's going to be exciting for what Newberry, for what they have to offer for Newberry. So the blend will live.
Blend lives on. That is tremendous news. Tremendous news.
My time is up, so I
We're gonna be at 2:15
no, we've got a Monty Farnsworth area, so
One egg.
just
You come up and they throw eggs at you. That's how that one works.
oh, I miss you guys. You're great. Thank you.
Well, sir, thank you for coming and sharing that news. I know that there's a whole lot of folks in town that are going to be really, really excited to hear that announcement.
Well, this was the first time it's been announced.
I was about to
talked
ask.
Manny right before I walked in, and this is the first time that it's been announced. And
Okay.
Wednesday, there will be a public statement that goes out on the Blend page.
Well, we will make sure that we share that far and wide. So
Thank you.
sir. Any other public comment from the chamber? Seeing none, do we have any virtual hand raised? Okay, we'll come back to the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published? Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, second from Commissioner Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to public hearings and ordinances. Item 7 on tonight's published agenda is approving construction plans for Phase 5 of Country Way at Newberry Town Center subdivision. Brian, are you going to take us through this? Okay, Commissioner Norfleet, do you have an announcement?
Yeah, I'm gonna recuse myself from this first, number 7.
All right, thank you, sir. I believe you'll find the form in your drawer. If not, Amy has one for you. No, John's right. Amy will bring one to you. Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a simple one. It's the construction plans for the next phase of Country Way at Newberry Town Center on Phase 5. It's part of the overall Country Way at Newberry Town Center plan developments. This particular phase, 73 total single-family units in the cottage section. Of course, it's part of the multiple phases in the Country Way Town Center. Total of a little over 11 acres. Location-wise, you can see the yellow outline of where the particular phase is going to be located within the overall plan development. A little bit blown up picture there of where it fits in up in the northeast corner. Again, even closer view, where the 73 home sites would be. The construction plans are first reviewed by the city's development application review team and by outside engineering firm EDA. Comments were provided to the applicant's agent, Christopher Potts. And plans were amended to incorporate the review comments and resubmitted. Final approval by staff. And the construction plan approval at this stage allows them to move forward with the horizontal infrastructure in advance of building houses on the site. Once they either get to a stage where they're complete and the infrastructure is approved by the city, or the applicant decides to provide a surety for the remainder of the construction, then they can do a final plat and actually start building houses on the site. So what staff's recommendation is to approve resolution 2021-08, approving the construction plans for Country Way at Newberry Town Center Phase 5.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I'll go ahead and accept a motion and we'll do questions.
Mr. Mayor, well, I'll go ahead and read the.
Yeah,
title.
please do the resolution.
So it's resolution 2021-08, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving with appropriate conditions and safeguards construction plans for Country Way at Newberry Town Center Phase 5 as authorized under section 5.17 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations for the construction of infrastructure and site improvements in a planned development PD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number 2021-08 upon its reading by title only.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Do I
Yes,
hear
sir.
that motion put on the floor for conversation? Or a motion put on the floor for conversation? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth,
Second.
a second from Commissioner Clark. Anybody have any questions for Brian?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not 100% certain, but it looks like there's probably room for one or maybe two more phases.
7 sticks in my mind for some reason with this, but it's been a long time. 7 phases. But I could have that wrong.
This is, after approval, it'll represent 192 units out of 365 approved.
With this bill, Brian, will be able to-
Any other questions for Brian? Okay, we have a motion probably second on the floor. No further questions from the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, we're on item 7, which is a resolution approving construction plans for phase 5 of Countryway at Newberry Town Center. We have a motion probably second on the floor to approve the resolution. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, ask a question on this motion, all you need to do to accomplish that, dial the phone number on your screen. That'll get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look at the bottom of the screen, see the little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure that you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment in chamber, then we'll move to virtual comment. Do you have any live members of the public who'd like to comment on the motion on the floor? Seeing none. Now, so we have any virtual members with their hand raised? Seeing none, we'll come back to the dais. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. And that's going to take us to item 8, which is creating a city ordinance to allow for longer stays and recreational vehicle parks in commercial campgrounds, increasing the maximum allowable number of park model RVs. Brian, you want to take this away, and then we'll ask Scott to read the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just pulling up the presentation. Okay, this is an amendment to the land development regulations that would allow for the extension of the length of stay and the allowable number of park model units. It's draft ordinance 2021.
Hang on 1 second, Brian. I'm sorry. I was just about to holler for Commissioner Norfleet to start making his way back this way. Never mind. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. M3 Development LLC, which are the developers of Treehouse Village RV Resort that was just passed by special exception recently, are requesting amendments to the city's land development regulations, which would allow longer length of stay for resort tenants, as well as the allowable number of park model units. Currently, the city's land development regulations limit the length of stay to 90 days, after which the tenants would have to move out of the park. The applicant's consultant has indicated through their studies that the luxury RV market is coming in earlier and staying longer. They'll pick a spot as sort of their base of operations for the season, and they're moving in earlier and leaving later. And so that is what's necessitating to be competitive in the luxury RV market, necessitating the request to extend the 90-day limit to 270 days, which is equivalent of 9 months. Staff did a little bit of quick and dirty calling around and research on other luxury RV resorts in the general vicinity in Florida. And I was not able to find a single one that had a limitation on the length of stay. And in fact, some of the comments I got was, well, why would you want to make them leave early if they wanted to stay and they're happy spending their money in your community, which is a point well taken. And so that's the first request, is to extend the amount of stay to at least 270 days. The second request is relative to the number of park models that they would be allowed to operate. And the park model is, basically the rental units that they'd be able to have. It can be either a standard type of an RV, like a Airstream, or it could be what's commonly known as a tiny house on wheels. It could be the house style RV that they would plant on site. Those units would be connected permanently to city water and sewer, and therefore they'd be paying utility taxes and usage fees. They would also act basically as the city's de facto motel that the city doesn't have currently. Right now, they're limited to 10% of the total number of units. So in the first phase, they would be going from an allowable 34 park models up to a maximum potential of 140. And overall, throughout the park, if they're actually at the 850 units they've been permitted for at build out a few years down the road, it would allow them to go up to a total of 340 park model units. Similar to a motel, they would also be paying the bed tax while they were staying. And so again, what is a park model? It can look like a little house. It can be an Airstream. It's 400 square foot and it's built to RV model standards. It has to be roadworthy. They're also subject to the same on-site home installation inspections. And so 90 to 100% of it would be built in a production facility. There's also they could build on-site cottages as well. That's another option that they could also pursue. They've got residential style amenities like a regular cottage would. The wheels can be left on or taken off, but typically they are hidden by skirting on the house style, like the tiny house on wheels park model type units. And so a lot of text up there, but the gist of it is in red and blue, requesting to go from 90 days consecutive day stays to 270, and from 10% of the total units to 40 on the allowable number of park models. Same with the commercial campground language, would go from 90 to 170 days to make it consistent. So at the March 1st Planning and Zoning Board hearing, the board did vote 3-2 to recommend approval of draft ordinance 2021-15 to the City Commission. One of the other things that they did, that the Planning and Zoning Board requested, was to try to do some kind of a tax analysis on the impact that this facility could have on the city. And so it's really, it's very cursory review, but what staff did was take a couple of examples of other RV resorts in the vicinity, Wilson Crossing and other, look at what those were assessed at, divided the number of total units to get a per unit assessment estimate, and blended that together, and using that methodology then said, okay, well, if we took that and applied it to the 850 units here, we would come up with. And so somewhere the developers have expressed that they're going to spend somewhere between $15 to $20 million on development of the site overall. The assessed value is never that high. And so the quick and dirty analysis came up with about a $9.8 million potential assessment for tax purposes, which would yield about a $59,000 ad valorem tax benefit to the city. But in addition to that, keep in mind as well, you also have your franchise fees for electric usage, you have utilities fees for water and sewer usage, fire assessment fees would also be increased, they would be paid for that. And then also shared sales tax revenues, the different sales tax, gas tax, that kind of thing, revenues. So it would also increase at least somewhat. So a little bit of a quick and dirty analysis on the taxes, but it would definitely provide a net positive on an annual basis for that.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Scott, you want to go ahead and read the ordinance?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance number 2021-15, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to amending the text of land development regulations of the city of Newberry, Article 4, Section 4.2.37, entitled Recreational Vehicle Parks and Commercial Campgrounds, specifically sections 4.2 37.4, subparagraph 3 and subparagraph 5, general requirements, and section 4.2.37.9, subparagraph 6, commercial campgrounds, to increase the maximum length of stay for guests and to increase the percentage of park model rental units, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is passed for ordinance 2021-15 as read by title only.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Now, this one has caused some conversation. And we are down to a 4-man board. So I'd like to ask for clarifying questions and before we ask for a motion, so that we make sure that when we do get to the point where we're making a motion, we don't find out an answer that would change the motion that we would make. Does anyone have any questions about this? Commissioner Norfleet.
The question I have is a little off topic from this, but how is the all these units be connected to the city sewer in some way or another, the city water? How is the city collecting revenue from the sewer and water? Does that coincide with the same usage?
Yes, Mr. It would, in that respect, would be similar to any residential unit that hooked up. You would have your water and wastewater fees would be based on usage. So your metered water would then generate the water and wastewater charges. Same with the electrical, because they'll each have those. And same with the park model units as well. You know, they would, everything, as far as I understand, is going to be individually metered.
What's the estimated usage?
Mr. Mayor, that we hadn't gotten that far as to how much the estimated usage would be.
I hadn't got the estimates on that.
We do, as far as the capacity fees, the city's code charges a half of an ERU for each of the spaces. And so based on that, I guess you would say on average, you could estimate that they were going to be using about half as much of electricity over the course of a year, that our electricity and utilities, based on not 100% occupancy throughout the year, that you would estimate based on that logic, it'd be about half as much as a regular full-time residential unit.
Is the sewer independent of the water?
Just like our others, we would be charging for sewer rates based on the water usage through the water meter usage.
Okay, Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, Brian, so we're talking about an 800 unit build out, right?
850 is.
850. Each one of these are metered?
They would either each one be metered, or there could be an opportunity for master metering. So that is also an opportunity, but at this point, we don't know which direction they're going to go yet.
Remember, the question before us tonight doesn't necessarily deal with that level of detail. So the question for us tonight is really about maximum allowed number of stays, commercial, those things will come back. Are they handled at the staff level when it comes to capacity issues? So we can ask the questions tonight, but that's not the question in front of us tonight.
On round two?
Correct. And if they know the answer, then come on down to the podium, sir. And
I didn't mean to get off in the weeds, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Chris Potts. I'm Director of Engineering for JV Pro. To answer Commissioner Norfleet's question as far as usage, as Brian indicated, a residential house is about 300 to 250 gallons per day. A RV is about 75 per night. So it's about a third of what you'd see for a residential house. Now, as far as the usage and metering, the plans aren't finalized. We either vision one master meter that the city will build a development and they'll pay, or we'll have 2 or 3 master meters throughout the development, depending on the layout and the logistics of it. So hopefully that answers your guys' questions.
And we can diverge tonight because we're in a legislative hearing, not a quasi judicial. So, but again, the question in front of us tonight isn't about capacity or those kinds of issues. The development that we went on a field trip of, some of us went down to Wilson and looked there. The city of Wilson made him meter every single unit. And he said that was a big waste of money because it all runs through the same meter eventually. So why have all this infrastructure? So I can see in something, that's a much smaller development. So I could see in something your size having phases or sections, but I would probably say forcing you guys to have an individual meter. But again, we'll get a presentation on that later down the road, and there may be a good argument why we should do that. Commissioner Martin, did you have a follow-up on the same topic?
Yeah, I had a similar question, only from the perspective deciding about this tonight was the possibility of having the staff to deal with 340 individual metered customers that were collecting a third of the price. I mean, the sunk cost for us on a staffing side is a little prohibitive. But if that's not the direction you're going.
No, we're looking at roughly 1 to 5 meters at the, throughout the development. Could be a little more, but there's definitely going to be 1, but we could see up to 4 or 5 range depending on the layout and what we do. So
Let's let our manager weigh in here because eventually these are going to be all smart meters. It won't take us any time.
Mr. Mayor, you kind of stole my thunder.
Oh, sorry.
So because we're not going to be billing customers for their monthly stay, we're billing the resort. So we're going to master meter them. It's up to them as to how much goes to an individual, how much an individual resident would use in a given evening. Now, we still have to plan for capacity at the water and wastewater plant. So we're using the numbers that their engineer suggested in terms of capacity reservation. But our preference, our strong preference is going to be 1 meter. And then to the mayor's point, once we get that 1 meter installed, hopefully it's just transmitting data to us on a hourly and daily basis, and we're not sending staff in there to read meters.
Just, yeah. Okay, do we have any questions about park models, Commissioner Farnsworth?
So Brian.
I was hoping to let the city manager and the engineer talk more.
With the park models are limited to 400 square feet, and they are not tied down in any way, or so they can be moved. Are they planning on tying them down, or?
Mr. Mayor, my understanding that even though that they could be moved in general, because they're going to be considered, again, it might depend on the type of unit. If it's an actual, like an Airstream, they might want to take it out. Probably not as a rental, but the majority of these, I think, probably are going to end up as sort of the tiny home on wheels that looks like a little house, the cottage. The applicants have indicated that it will be tied down, because if it's going to be there on a semi-permanent basis for the possibility of a hurricane or something coming through, it has to be tied down for their to protect their investment as well as for safety.
That's my understanding. The reason for a park model is in case there is a hurricane that can be removed. That's how it's done down in Swanee and down in Swanee and all. So
that would be up to the applicant whether they wanted to take the strategy of moving them out of harm's way or whether they felt they were tied down securely enough to weather the storm.
And with a fire assessment, is each unit going to be assessed a fire assessment?
It's my understanding that each park model unit would be assessed and each structure built in the development would be assessed a fire assessment fee.
Okay. And so they wanted to go from 10% to 40%.
Yes, Mr. Murray. Like I said, it would be a total potential. Not that they would actually necessarily meet that, but they've asked for a potential of up to 340 total units at build out, 340 of the 850 spaces they've been approved for. The first phase would be about 140 potential units at 40%, as opposed to 34 at the 10% mark.
So it seems to me this is kind of coming in as an RV park, but they're transitioning into a trailer park. I mean, that's a feeling I'm getting.
Mr. Mayor, the reason for the park models is explained by the applicants, and when I called other RV resorts and talked to them about their park models and things too, it was they confirmed that the park models serve two purposes. The first one is as people come in and they stay for 3, 6, or 9 months in the resort, they invite their family members and friends to come join them for short stays, a weekend or a week at a time. And so by having a place for them to stay on site, they can all share the same amenities and stay with each other and cook out and all that stuff. And then the flip side of that is it also provides additional, I think one of the reasons is explained to me that they're interested in maybe getting a few more units than they would be allowed, would be it also serves the Champions Park when you have tournaments in, it gives a place for if they're traveling in an RV, obviously they have an RV spot available, but if they want to rent a room, then the teams can rent the rooms as well. Same for Easton when they're having archery tournaments and any other sports tournaments or happenings in the area. So again, it would not be equivalent or associated with a mobile home park in that the RV market is that they're aiming for is a high-end market. Usually that's entails limiting the age of RVs that can park there and that kind of thing to newer models. If they were to allow it to turn into anything like that, then that would have a negative impact on their target market.
Also, the park models, will they have the same restriction of what, 270 days?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, they would have the same 270-day limit.
Okay. I'm thinking it probably cost prohibitive anyhow. I don't know how much they're going to be charging per night, but I think it'd be a lot more than the regular trailer park. I mean, the regular trailer
Brian,
space.
that question came up in the P&Z as well. And the park models are being run much more like hotel nights. So you have somebody, you have cleaning services, you're paying something that's comparable to a hotel night, maybe saving a little bit. But no one on the P&Z could answer the question of why we would want to limit someone, kick them out of the city. But it did precipitate a conversation about, trailer parks. You see clothes hanger lines and you see porches being built on and all those kinds of things. And none of that, by having the 9-month, you eliminate all of that. And so in order to go after the market that they're going after, they have a vested incentive to make sure that it doesn't take on that or feel. And you still have the floor. I just wanted to offer that. Commissioner Norfleet.
How does the park models relate to our tiny home villages?
Mr. Mayor, they wouldn't really relate to that. It's a similarity in that it's the same type of units, but they would not be developed to the same type of standard. They would be developed to the RV park and commercial campground standard. It's a little bit different. It's actually a higher standard of development than the tiny home neighborhoods would be, because there's a higher level of landscaping and maintenance and such required.
Commissioner Clark.
Brian, and I've reviewed this and this, the bill that's come in with this project and talking about what you brought out. What about somebody coming in and, is there a long-term rental? Did somebody come in with 270 days, they just come in to stay there and long-term rental pricing to be able to use the school?
Mr. Mayor, the school issue kind of came up a number of times in planning and zoning board, as well as in the initial discussion. And what we've been able to confirm is that when you rent a space in an RV park or you rent a park model for a certain period of time, you're not signing a lease agreement. You're signing basically a day-to-day agreement, just like a motel or hotel. It's correct. And so you wouldn't be able to. You would not be able to provide the qualifying documentation to the school board to allow you to actually register at that address.
Commissioner Martin?
Brian, what was the percentage of the tiny homes that we were going to allow with a planned development?
Believe that was 30%, Mr. Mayor.
30%. Okay. And reiterate to me what you were just saying about the higher standard was in the
Mr. Mayor, the
village or
the RV resort or RV park code that we have in the city of Newberry is actually probably one of the highest standards. I think it was designed originally to ensure that if we have an RV park, it's at a higher level of standards because the landscaping requirements, the buffering requirements, the internal development requirements are all at a higher level than your average LDRs for other types of developments. And so it would definitely be, it requires a higher level of investment on a per unit basis than a tiny home neighborhood would require.
Okay. I feel with the debate that went back and forth at P&Z and some of it that's even here, I can't help but feel we're kind of sending a little bit mixed messages with the tiny home versus the RV park versus the 30% versus the 40%. Not sure really how I want to remedy that in my head.
Mr. Mayor, I guess staff would see it as serving two different needs. Whereas in a planned development, if you were putting up to 30% of tiny homes, that's providing a permanent long-term residential option where you could get, registered for schools and that kind of thing. That's your permanent residence. Whereas this provides an option for friends and family of RVers to come in and stay with them, but then also provides a potential for community motel service that we don't currently have.
Is this one or the other? Is this a combined ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, both elements are in the ordinance, but each one can be dealt with separately within the ordinance. It's the first reading, and so we can amend going up to the second reading.
I didn't. The 270 doesn't give me any heartache. The 40% does. So that's what I'm asking about that. 30% even gives me a little bit of heartache, but since it would be, I guess, mentally more consistent with the plan, I probably would be okay with that.
And Mr. Mayor, the applicant in our discussions has indicated to me that they don't necessarily intend to build a 40%, but if they build and they're wildly successful and they're very high occupancy rates, they want the option to be able to go to that level. They're not going to build more than they reasonably believe they can keep occupied.
Yeah, and another aspect, I have all the respect for the developers here. They've been nothing but great community partners to us now. I'd hate to, I know what their standard may be, but what if they sell the property? Do those standards go with to the new owner, for instance?
Mr. Mayor, the standards remain the same. The standards don't change from one owner to the next. The provisions within the special exception that was approved to allow the development would remain the same. The only way to amend that is to come back to the city commission and make their request for an amendment. And so the standards and codes and everything would remain the same from one owner to the next.
The code's name, but maybe not the priorities, is where I have a little bit of concern, I guess. But the is there a way to potentially phase in an ask of, hey, this is what we've done, this is what we demonstrated, this is what the occupancy, we'd like to get more park models approved in the zoning?
Mr. Mayor, it's a legislative amendment, and so the commission can decide.
I may be completely okay with the 340 post demonstration that it's not going to go completely sideways, because we can kind of
game plan everything here and idealize it as much as we want, but practice sometimes maybe doesn't live up to it. I'm just trying to be honest, I guess. Forthright.
Commissioner Clark?
What I'd like to say is, and kind of what Tim is saying here too, though, the tiny homes, this is two different things, but anybody that's willing to come in here and spend $9 to $10 million on a project, I don't believe it's going to put up with much stuff being not above board. And they've already proven themselves in the community. But I'm just saying that's a lot of money being spent to have it just go down. So just food.
Commissioner Norfleet?
I just have one comment on the, I would be fine with no time limit on the stay. The 40%, 30%, I'm kind of siding with Commissioner Martin on that. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Brian, it seems to me, because I think Commissioner Martin was headed towards a nice kind of compromise. Do we have a trigger for how much of the RV park has to be built per the park models? So we could say, well, if we're going to give you 40%, but you can only build 20% of that or half of that until you get to X percentage of your RV models. That would allow Commissioner Martin to see what's being built. And then it would allow us some leverage to be able to go back and say, you're not holding up your end of the bargain in what you said you were going to build.
Mr. Mayor, I think the appropriate way to address that would probably not be through an ordinance that changes the overall LDRs, but to change the LDRs to something that basically says that those terms will be defined in the special exception. And so, because right now, the commission can't grant variances to what's in the code in terms of the 10% or the length of stay. But if you change the code to add that variability and put it on the special exception process, then it could be done through the special, but that's a much longer means of addressing the.
Well, and it may not give the city enough leverage to address some of it. I mean, I guess maybe I'm not quite understanding what the concerns are. I mean, if someone said, I want to build 1,000-room hotel, would we say, well, I'm not comfortable with 1,000 rooms, but I'll give you 600? Is that for Commissioner Clark's point, with the amount of upfront investments and the standards and regulations that we're applying here, in that analogy, would we say, no, you can only build a 600-room hotel, not 1,000?
I think hotel's a little bit more proven concept in my mind than a RV. How many in this park? Do you remember how many phases we're talking about with going through before the build out?
Mr. Mayor, I believe that the general concept was 3, perhaps. Phase 1 would be 340 units total, of which they could either do 34 at the 10% limit, or if we granted up to 40%, would go up to 140 roughly. And then beyond that, I think that the applicants have indicated that they're going to assess after that first phase is up and running, or as it's up and running, the next step, whether they want to do further sites and park models, all just sites, maybe some primitive camping area as well, could be an option. And so based on the performance of phase 1, I think it's going to guide how they're going to proceed to phase 2 and then 3.
Commissioner Clark?
So in this phase, then, we're gonna come back and approve phase 2 and 3. I'm sorry.
Are we gonna come back and approve phase 2 and 3 like we did with the North Fleets?
Mr. Mayor, the next step would be approval of the site plan for phase 1. And then after the site plan for phase 1 is approved and developed, and if they come back in with phase 2, then there would be.
So then the proof is in the
option phase
pudding.
2.
Phase 1's done. If there's 40% and it don't work, then we come back to the table and either say yay or nay on the next part, as far as me.
once the zoning is granted, that genie's out of the bottle. Isn't it?
Mr. Mayor, the special exception allows for up to 850 units. The difficulty we run into is that if we could try to do it by phase, we could say, you know, phase one, you get 40%, and then based on performance of phase one, we'll go further. The problem with that is what we're addressing in this ordinance is community-wide, and so it would be applied to every project instead of just one specific. Or we could try to rewrite it a little bit to say that in a multi-phase development, first phase, you get up to 40%, and then successive phases require approval by the commission.
Can we maybe sidebar this? I don't want to take up everybody's time and try to reiterate everything, but can maybe we sidebar this with the applicant? Because I'd feel a lot more comfortable doing the 340 if it was phased in and we had, because that would serve the purpose, I think mentally for me, of having the proof of what's been done. And, or maybe, because I think once the zoning is granted, that the genie's out of the bottle, but and then maybe let the applicant decide, do they want to go for the whole 40% now and risk that getting shot down? Or would they be willing, or I'm sorry, would they rather go to say 30% now, get it all now, or do the phase in at 40% over the, do you know?
Well, hey, before let them
And I don't know.
spill
I
that
don't know if
around
we
for a
need to have
second
that
first.
conversation here
Yeah.
on the fly.
If we approved the 30 and the no time limit, which I haven't heard anybody else speak of, how do we have to go back through this entire process, back to P and Z, two readings to move it from 30 to 40?
No, Mr. Mayor, we could make the amendment prior to the second reading.
Right? Okay, so, and I'd like to hear some of the other commissioners, because remember, guys, we're down to 4, and that creates some probabilities equations, and it really depends on how the motion is made, right? So that's why I want us to have this conversation ahead of time before we get ourselves sort of locked into some parliamentary nightmare.
Which is
Right.
why I don't necessarily think we need to
Yeah,
deliver on the fly.
Mr. Mayor, here too, and this is, I'm good with the no time. This is a person that is investing multi-millions of dollars in our community that needs a return on the investment. Somewhere along the line, something has come up. And if you need 140 for the return on the investment and the park fills up, he's good. He makes money, he stays with us. What we don't want to do is approve this thing and limit them based on the money they're spending, no return on investment, this thing don't go forward. Or they go broke. So if we're trying to bring something to town that's nice, my point, and they need to return on their investment, we need to understand that. So if we need to table it, or if the 30% is good tonight and they can move forward, or then without this, Brian, tonight, do we stop? If we table it, does things stop and spending more money for nothing?
If we postpone time certain and bring up the issue again at a later commission meeting,
That's just,
started from now.
I'm good with going with the 30 if that's what we need to do, and you can come back without a whole lot of heartache and changing rules and regs and stuff like that, and the no time limit.
Commissioner Norfleet.
Brian, how hard would it be if you did go with the 30 or 40% of the first phase with a clause in there for the next 2 phases, depending on how the results turn?
Mr. Mayor, we take our best crack at it, go with the city attorney, get them, make sure that it was done upright, and bring it back at the second reading.
I guess my only question about that, because I agree with Commissioner Martin in terms of consistency. I think RV parks and tiny homes are 2 different things, and we have different kinds of standards for different kinds of developments. But we are consistent with the process that we have here. And so once you're approved, you're approved. So we don't make any of our other developers come back for different phases and kind of go through this again. So I guess it's, if that's the direction we're going, I guess it's which inconsistency do you want to create? Do you want to create an inconsistency in the process? Because I don't see it as inconsistent right now between RV parks and tiny homes. Those are two different types of developments. It would be strange if they were consistent, right? Because they're different things. But to introduce a level of inconsistency to our process and say to Kevin Coleman or Trip Norfleet or any of these developers, well, we're going to have different, we're going to approve the first phase, but then you have to come back for every phase and potentially we're going to mix it up on you. I think that's, this board has always been pretty consistent with private property rights. You know your business, whether I agree or disagree with your numbers, you're the business owner. And the level of standard we're holding RV parks to is so high, it's higher than any of the neighborhoods. So we have a greater chance of some of our neighborhoods that have been approved deteriorating and becoming, unattractive neighborhoods than we do of having an RV park, because the level of standards that we've written is so high. So that would be kind of another, what kind of consistency do we want to have there? Commissioner Norfleet?
On the consistency, the 30% is part of the tiny homes, correct? So if we're going to a 40% on this, that would be an exception to the consistency of the 30%, correct?
But they're two different
But they are two different things.
types of
but
developments, right?
It's two different developments. One's temporary, one's permanent or resident.
So, I mean, we have different neighborhoods that have different lot lines, different sizes. I wouldn't count that as inconsistent and say, well, every neighborhood in Newberry has to have 50-foot lot lines. I would say it depends on the kind of neighborhood you're developing, and they're different developments. So it's okay to have different numbers for those. So I wouldn't put RV parks and tiny homes and say, well, they've got to look alike because the square footage is similar, right? One's temporary, one's permanent. It's going to be there forever. One's for sale. One's for a nightly rental. So I don't see those as inconsistent. I would see it as inconsistent to make an RV park come back for each phase for different levels of approval, but not do that for neighborhoods. But maybe we just want to change and make everyone come back for different phases and go through some process so we can see the kind of houses you're building. We can see if we like them, we like your yards, those kinds of things. Commissioner Norfleet, were you? Commissioner Farnsworth?
The only problem I have with this is that when this was first presented to this citizens of Newberry and the city commissioners presented as a certain way, and now they're coming back and they're changing it. And there was some reluctance on a lot of citizens to approve it before this came before us. And now wonder what the citizens' feelings would be regarding it now, without the restriction on the length of stay, and actually changing it from more of an RV park into a trailer park. And to Commissioner Clark's point, which was a very good one, they're supposed to be spending a lot of money here to develop this area, but they knew what the score was when they signed up for it, and now they're wanting to change the place where the ball was placed. So I'm okay with the 30%, but I'd like to keep it at 270 days. I don't think we need to have unlimited.
Just to be clear and fair to developer, they from the very beginning said we want to build an RV park, but the numbers that your ordinance allow aren't workable business numbers. So if you remember, they already have the zoning, which I think we misstated. They already have the zoning to build an RV park. What we're talking about here tonight is about the LDRs. And that question, because they were upfront with us and said, we want to build an RV park, but 10% park models and 60 days, I think is what it was. Maybe it was 90, I can't remember. No, there's no RV park across the country that can make those numbers. So they've been forthright and upfront about the numbers they need to make the business model work since the beginning. And because they were upright, it derailed the conversation on the P and Z, and it came close to derailing the conversation here on the commission. And because it derailed, and those were quasi judicials, we had a conversation when we were talking about the zoning, and we sort of took a head nod about the 40% 270. And again, that was before you heard a presentation, before you heard the information, but this board intimated to them that that was certainly within the realms of possible. So they've been honest and upfront from the beginning about what they needed to make the numbers work. And we have been upfront, at least with the information that we had up to that moment, about what we'd be comfortable with. So they're not changing the game on us. They haven't changed their minds. They haven't tried to say, well, we're going to do one thing and then switch it out and do something up. They, from the very first day, they said 10% and 90 days. Nobody can build a $15 million RV park and make those numbers work. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I am hearing some consensus about the 30 days or the 30% would be comfortable, and the 270. Let's hear from the developer about how big of a deal that 10% difference is. Would you rather move forward with 30 and 270 right now and then come back maybe after a little while, or what's your preference?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd just like to remind everybody, the reason for the 40% is because they are viewing it from the tourism standpoint. The city of Newberry does not have a hotel to serve all the ball teams that come in. So the reason for the 40% was to help subsidize rooms for the teams that come in and out. But after talking with the client and developer, we're willing to do the 30% if that's what the commission feels is applicable here. But I know some of the commissioners have been talking about an unlimited stay. So if that is their view on it, we'd be open to that as well. But we would, at the very least, ask for the 270 with the 30%.
Does the unlimited stay, I know you haven't had time to do projections. Does the unlimited stay help to balance out the 30%? I know that in the P&Z, it's very rare to find people who stay unlimited. And it really seems the only objection to 12 months out of the year was this thought that families would move in and then use that to put kids in school, which I think is a very narrow margin of folks. But we could give you 11 months and 29 days. And would that help? I'm not familiar enough with your business.
It's with the one item that the unlimited stay would help is a lot of blue collar workers, electricians, contractors hop around from city to city when they work on a job that's going to be 2 or 3 years long, and then they move on to somewhere else. And they find staying at RV parks is more appealing to them because they either have a fifth wheel or an RV that they park, work at the construction site, and then move on. So that would help counterbalance the 40%. But again, the reason for the request for the longer stay is to subsidize for the times when sporting events aren't going on, to help the park be successful. So, and again, I'd like to just remind the mayor and the board that the management group is nationally renowned for high-end RV parks. And so that's the type of management that's going to be in the RV park. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions for the developer? Would you like to say anything, or you? We'll have public comment in a minute, sir. Any
Hey, Mr.
questions?
Mayor,
Mark, Mr. Commissioner.
So couldn't you, let's be real. They got 270 days. They want to stay longer in Newberry for whatever reason. What if they just go from lot 10 to lot 40? That moved the thing. Now they got 270 days more. So what are we arguing about?
One of the reasons why I have been very cautious about this.
Are you gonna go
is
down
that.
there and strike the tires?
I mean, I've always cautioned this board from passing laws, because once we pass the law,
Yeah.
I'm going to stand right there behind our code enforcement officer and say, hey, you guys passed a law and we're trying to enforce it. So I want to be really cautious about us passing laws that are virtually unenforceable.
Yes.
Or are going to require an inordinate amount of time from our staff to chase down and
I think
enforce
that's
when we
why they
all
have a
rather
man-
do something
I
else.
think that's why they have a management team in place. Not for us to go strike tires like a parking meter and make sure they move in 9 months. They're gonna keep records of this. I mean, this is crazy.
Well, and I have a similar thought to the standard. Our job is to write the development standards, not to tell them what numbers they need to hit for their business model. So that's, just my philosophical thought. Normally when people come in here and they want to spend 10 to $15 million, we let them say, this is the numbers we need, and we try to facilitate that. I understand the concerns about the deterioration. I think those concerns could equally be applied to any neighborhood that we approve in here. And the RV park, to address this concern, is our most stringent standard we have. Our most stringent standard. I mean, the landscaping that they're going to have to do, we don't put that on any other neighborhood in town. For this reason. So I'm not squawking about it. I think it's a good rule to have. Are there any more questions from the dais for staff or the developer? Well, let's see if we can entertain. There's 2 questions here. We can either make a motion to approve it as it's written. We got to have a motion first. So we can have a motion to approve the ordinance as it's written with 40 and 270. Someone can say, I like the 270. I want to go 30. Someone can say, I make a motion to have unlimited and 30. Any of those variations in between, but we need a motion on the floor and then we can get public comment.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Commissioner, was that Martin? Commissioner
Yes,
Martin?
yes, sir. I'd be willing to at least put the motion on the floor for discussion of the unlimited at 30%.
Okay, I have a motion for unlimited stay and 30% park models. Do I hear a second? Okay, I have a second from Commissioner Clark. Questions from the dais on the motion on the floor. 30% unlimited stay. No questions from the dais, and we'll open it up to the public. Dallas, if you'll put our phone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on item 8 on tonight's published agenda. This is about creating an ordinance to allow for longer stays in our recreational vehicle parks and commercial campgrounds. This is a change in our LDRs. We have a motion properly second on the floor to extend to an unlimited stay in the park, but reduce the requested number of park models from 40 to 30. If you'd like to call and make a comment on the motion on the floor, now is the appropriate time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing the phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look at the bottom of your screen, see the little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. Make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment, and then we'll go to virtual comment. We have live comment from the audience. If you do, come on right down to the podium, but you have to come to the podium and give us your name. And okay. All right. Thank you. Do we have any other live comment from the audience? Hearing none, we'll go to virtual comment. Dallas, we have no virtual hands raised. Okay. Then we'll come back for a roll call vote. Begin with Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Martin.
Yes.
Commissioner Farnsworth. Yes. Commissioner Norfleet. Motion passes unanimously. Now we'll move us on to item 9. Creation of a city ordinance regulating food truck operations. And this is also Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last one was going to be short and easy. This one's a little bit more in the weeds. I apologize in advance because it's an issue that has a lot of different variables. So, okay. I apologize in advance. It's one of those in the weeds type ordinances. This is draft ordinance 2021-02, which is regulation of food trucks in the city of Newberry. Last year, the Florida legislature passed House Bill 1193, Senate Bill 1193, basically preempting local government from adding additional licensing requirements or fees to operate food trucks within the local jurisdiction. And it was cited as Occupational Freedom and Opportunity Act. Covered a lot more than just food trucks, but the food truck section that it covered was 509-102.102. And as I said, the gist of it is that it limits the city and local municipalities, government entities to what they can and can't do as it comes to food trucks. And the other thing it prohibits is you can't prohibit them throughout the entirety of your municipality. You have to provide some means for food trucks to operate within your jurisdiction. And so provided definitions, outlined what the cities can do and can't do. And so what it does say, though, is that it doesn't, it's not to be construed as to affect the municipality, county, or other local governments entities' authority to regulate the operation of mobile food dispensing vehicles, i.e. food trucks, other than the regulations as described in 2. So you can still regulate the sort of the when, where, what time, how. You just can't add additional fees, and you can't prohibit them entirely from your jurisdiction. Again, the state regulates the food truck industry in that they provide the licensure, they provide the plan review for the kitchens, the onboard kitchens, and they do the inspections through the local health departments. And they're inspected at least annually, sometimes more semi-annually. And so what we can do as a municipality is, like I said, you can regulate sort of the how, when, and where. We are allowed to charge a business tax receipt like we would with any other business that operates in the city of Newberry. We can dictate what zoning districts they're allowed to operate within, the hours of operation, the frequency that they can operate on a daily or semi-daily basis, noise levels generated by them, what kind of signage they can put up, and then waste collection issues and parking and operating in the rights of way, those kind of issues. And so for our draft ordinance 2021-02, we established the intent of the ordinance and the definitions and specifics of the specifies rather the tax receipt would be required, authorizes what locations they can operate out of, sets conditions for the use while they're there, establishes penalties for non-compliance, which of course we never want to get to. So obviously the intent of the ordinance is to define the legal operation of food trucks within the city, and then also establish that we will now be in compliance with state statutes, the new state statute. Definitions, it provides definitions for all of these different items. So we would still, if the ordinance passes, we would still require a business tax receipt to be charged. Again, like I said, like any other business. It does eliminate the current requirement to get a mobile vendor license, which adds an additional fee and procedure on top of the just obtaining the business tax. The business tax receipt, it used to be called the occupational license. And then the state legislature said, no, you can't call it an occupational license anymore. You have to call it what it is, which is a tax. And so majority of the communities and local municipalities and counties charge a business tax for the privilege of operating business within your jurisdiction. So for instance, the typical majority of business owners pay $94 a year for the business tax. Okay, so the ordinance, draft ordinance authorizes what locations that food trucks can operate in, which in our instance, the staff suggests that they're allowable in all commercial and industrial zoning districts. As far as on city property, including right-of-way, would only be allowed during a special permitted event. For instance, if you closed a street down for a festival or something, of course, if you want to have food trucks in there, they need to be legally able to park in the right-of-ways for that activity. On private property, as part of a lawfully permitted, if a permit's required, special event. So if you had a really large event that was going to generate traffic issues and all, and they had to get a special temporary use permit, the food truck would be part of that overall special event permit. They wouldn't require a separate one just for the food trucks. Of course, in common areas, this has become more common, especially during COVID, during the pandemic, to be able to operate in residential subdivisions. It says limited to 4 events per year, but that's for each food truck. And so if you have multiple food trucks operating in your jurisdiction, you could, in theory, have a different food truck or multiple food trucks every day of the week in a residential neighborhood in the common area, if they're invited by the homeowners association. Quarter, I'm sorry, 4 per quarter, absolutely. Yeah, so once a week. Yes, sir. And again, of course, at private gatherings like weddings or corporate, events, that kind of thing, that don't require a permit, you wouldn't have to get a special permit of any kind to have a food truck at your event. It's just an event on private property. And so setting the conditions for land use, basically that states that they have to have some kind of an affidavit from the owner of the property that they're going to operate on, stating they have their permission. There was a lot of debate about this in the initial discussion, and the commission was not necessarily in favor of this. We go back and we start looking into it. The reason for that, and the reason that just about every jurisdiction requires that, is because the ultimate responsible party for code violations is the property owner. If you have a mobile food truck, actually being able to enforce code violations on the food truck could be problematic if they refuse to comply. And so ultimately, the owner of the property where the food truck is located becomes the responsible party. So the property owner, of course, by default, would have shared responsibility for code violations. And of course, they would have to agree to keep the area clean, which really falls on the food truck. An agreement between the owner of the property and food truck has to be developed. It would not allow for food trucks on vacant lots. There's a number of reasons to prevent that. 1 food truck per property, unless you're having a special event, like you're having a food truck rally or something like that, where you could have multiple food trucks at the same time. And in the spirit of keeping them mobile and not letting them set up a de facto permanent restaurant location, allowing them to operate at a single location 4 times a week, but no more than 3 consecutive days. So they still have to move around a bit, and they would have to, the hours of operation 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. are suggested. And they would have to move every day. They couldn't leave it overnight unless it was going into a groups, covered storage area. The site plan approval can just be a hand-drawn sketch, but it's basically to ensure that they're not interfering with pedestrian or vehicular traffic on site, too close to fire hydrants, that kind of thing.
Commissioner Martin and then Commissioner Carter.
Back up on screen. So you're saying this would allow them to operate 3 consecutive days, but they would have to move each night?
They could open up at the same location 3 consecutive days, 4 total for the week, but they would have to remove it every night. They wouldn't be able to leave it overnight parked in the parking lot of whatever business that's given them permission.
Unless it's a festival or something like that.
Unless it's unless it's a special event that's been approved for multiple days. That keeps them mobile and prevents the de facto restaurant operation. Sure.
Put your mic on there, Commissioner Clark.
No more than 3 consecutive. It does not say, should we put that there is what I'm asking.
Oh, the requirement to remove it per night, it is in there, sir. It's just a little bit further down.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Has to be located on a paved surface, not impede the flow of pedestrian vehicle traffic. That's kind of obvious. Outdoor dining areas like picnic tables and things would be prohibited. Again, it's supposed to be pick up and go. It's not supposed to be set up a de facto restaurant situation. By no drive up sales, what that means is you would have to pull up and you'd have to be able to park, get out and get your food, but you can't have a drive up window on a food truck, and you can't You wouldn't have the food truck operator walking out to the car and people would need a place to park and be able to get up and come to the window. And has to be removed daily unless allowed during a multi-day event. No alcohol sales unless approved as part of a special event. And I will say, as far as that one goes, that's kind of a mixed bag with other communities we looked at, other ordinances. Some allow it, some don't. It's just up to each individual community. And then, of course, it can't interfere with traffic, blocking buildings, fire hydrants and such. They would not be able to, in general, park in park areas, city parks, or neighborhood association parks, that kind of thing, without it being part of an authorized special event, or in the instance of a neighborhood, without an invitation from the HOA for that once a week food truck event to come in.
Excuse me. Which would essentially be that affidavit from the owner, right?
Well, for the homeowners
HOA.
association, they might necessarily have to give them an affidavit for the ownership, but they would give them an invitation, or they would have something to say that we were invited by the homeowners association. And actually, that was one that the industry folks that were watching during the planning and zoning board meeting said they approved of, because they run into issues where they might get invited in, but somebody else comes in and kind of tries to move in on their day, kind of thing. And so that helps protect them and their interests as well. Territorial, right? That's the other reason for limiting it to one per week for each one, because then nobody establishes a territory that they get. Signage, this is another area where the industry made a request at the planning and zoning board stage, and so we've accommodated here. Originally, signage was limited to just the signage on the food truck itself. And the industry said, it really helps us out if we can at least have a flag out at the street to, advertise that we're here. They might be off the street just a little bit. And so change that to say they could have one temporary sign, which of course would have to move with the truck every night. It'd have to be on private property. It wouldn't be allowed on public right of way. No amplified music or noise to attract attention to the food truck. And also made a little bit of a tweak here based not on the planning and zoning board recommendation, but just to clarify the language, so that because the industry folks that were watching said, well, I have a little microphone built into my truck, and when orders are complete, I announce to the customer that your order is ready. So I clarified it a little bit there to say that would not be prohibited. That would be allowable. It's just having loud music or somebody on a bullhorn calling people over. That's what the prohibition on that is about. Of course, have adequate fire protection, which is a little bit redundant because the state requires it anyway as part of their licensure. And just in general, not create any nuisance conditions. Keep the area around the food truck, clean, provide trash receptacles, and
Brian,
they cannot
before you-
discharge. Sir.
Sorry, before you move off of this slide, the P and Z did spend quite a bit of time talking about the signs and talking about the noise. And we really did focus, and Brian kind of went over it, the noise that is meant to attract attention to the food truck. So if you're in a ice cream truck and you're driving up and down and it's got that little bit of noise that's playing to let you know, that's not what we're envisioning here. It's the really loud music that's saying, hey, I'm here. It's calling out, I think that's going to be some coaching with a code enforcement officer to be able to differentiate the difference there. Because no one on the PNC really had a heartache about playing soft background music as you're standing there in line, but it was that loud. On the signs though, my memory of that conversation was that what the PNZ recommended was they just all had to disappear after that day. So you could put a couple of signs that way, a couple of signs that way, but they had to leave with you. So I may, instead of saying one temporary sign, say that you get 30 feet in each direction to put a couple of signs, are limited to 2 signs within each direction. Because usually these guys have the 2 flags that kind of wave around, and then they have a couple of those. Our conversation with P&Z and was reiterated by some of the industry folks. These signs are really expensive. So they have a vested incentive to take them with them and for them not to disappear. So allowing them to put 3 or 4 up and down the street to kind of let folks know. No one really had too much a heartache on that. So that may be one point there. And then just to clarify, Brian, because sometimes we get a little confused here. This ordinance is talking about, one truck that's worked out a deal with one business or a neighborhood. This is not talking about festivals. If you put on a food truck rally and you're bringing in 12, those are totally different issues. This is the one food truck here, one food truck there, kind of setting up. And I did go reiterate, because we had a discussion item on this before the P and Z heard it, which is actually a fairly helpful way to organize just for future reference, because it allowed me to let the P and Z know that y'all's primary concern out of that discussion was creating a situation where there was never any incentive to build a restaurant in the city of Newberry anymore, because it was so easy to set up a food truck and take all the business. So the P and Z really kept that in mind when they were having this conversation. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then going forward, and to your point, absolutely. The one thing this doesn't address, but we are going to bring back at a later date, is the concept of a food truck plaza. There hasn't been any call for it, but I recently received a call from somebody who's interested in establishing one. So that's going to be the next round. But this is, as the mayor said, this is the one-off, the individual who's made an agreement with a local commercial operator business to operate at least a few days out of the week on their site, on their property. And of course, food trucks would not be allowed to discharge waste, especially fats, oil, and grease from the vehicle into the city's sewer system. And of course, they have to comply with all the state and federal laws as applicable, carry a copy of their state licenses, which the state also requires. Penalties, like I said, which we hopefully never get to. The owner and the food truck owner and the property owner would be jointly liable for code violations. If they refuse to come into voluntary compliance, the LDR administrator would have the option to revoke their supplemental site plan. Of course, they'd have to be given plenty of notice and reasonable time to cure the violations. And like everybody else, we would work with them as long as there's incremental improvement. We keep it, would extend as necessary to get them into compliance. And then if we ever got to the point where their supplemental site plan was revoked, then they'd have to wait a year to come back, is basically as a remedy for their refusal to voluntarily comply. And okay, so operating without the authorization would subject them to code enforcement action and even potentially civil action if it warranted that. So, as the mayor said, at the Planning and Zoning Board did discuss this at length. They voted unanimously at the end to recommend the approval of draft ordinance 2021-02 to the commission. And as we stated, also directed staff to allow for limited temporary signage for food trucks, which was incorporated into the ordinance. However, that is subject to further loosening if it's the will of the commission. So with that, staff recommends approval of draft ordinance 2021-02 on first reading.
Thank you, Brian. Scott, will you go ahead and read that ordinance?
Yes, sir. This is ordinance 2021-02, LDR 21-02, and the ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending the code of ordinances of the city of Newberry by amending chapter 66, peddlers and solicitors, providing regulations for mobile food trucks operating within the city, establishing prohibitions, establishing operating requirements, establishing penalties for violations, amending section 66-30 definitions, adding mobile food dispensing units as a temporary use allowable within the city and non-residential zoning districts, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance 2021-02 as read by title only.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Questions from the dais?
We just talked about, Mr. Mayor, I thought we
Commissioner
would
Park.
change the signage usage in the motion.
Do you want to amend?
Can
your
we amend
motion?
it to change the signage usage?
Okay, so are we saying, do we want to put a limit or a distance on where you can put signs? What's the commissioners? Instead of just saying you only get one sign, 25 feet in each direction, 30 feet in each direction.
Yeah, give some leeway to their signage for their business. Some way, I don't know the exact terminology, but
Well, why don't we just say you have to remove all the signs instead of trying to figure out a distance?
Yeah.
Just say all signs have to leave with you at the end of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see Brian saying someone's going to put 80 signs.
I'm just seeing that.
I think it's a little cost prohibitive, but I understand the concern there. Commissioner Martin.
Well, you can get yard signs for $5 and you could end up with 10 of those. So it's not outside the realm of possibility to really get a bunch of them out there. But I want to kind of to leave some flexity, because if they're set up in a certain area, getting your self-noticed may require a little bit more. It may be, hey, 2 turns, if they're in the industrial park, they want to put a sign out on 2741 with an arrow, get to the 3-way, something like that. I mean, I would
remove all
be-
signage.
I mean,
Okay. Mr. Manager, did you have a suggestion?
yeah, what were you flagging?
Was broad. To Brian's point, I'd say water is 300 feet, that's 100 yards. Upstream, downstream, easy for us to keep up with. It's hard for them to forget what it is.
Mr. Mayor, I would point out, though, that our sign ordinance prohibits commercial temporary signage in all right of ways. And so
Sure.
allowing them to put signs off the site of where they're actually located, I can see as being a confusing element for the industry members, because on the one hand, we're saying they can put signs off site. On the other hand, our codes say you can't have commercial temporary signs up and down the right of ways. And so it would have to be on private property. So conceivably they could.
I thought there was like a 24-hour loophole to the commercial. That's just for politicians to get that loophole.
Yes, sir. Political speech is First Amendment protected, and to some
Yeah.
extent as commercial speeches too, but by outlining all commercial temporary signage up and down the right of ways, that doesn't violate the.
But if they're working with a business owner, then they should be able to put up as many signs on site. But they can put signage on site. It just has to be gone when they leave. And then it's up to them.
Give them some sort of
Leeway.
I can see this turning into
And it's another,
road enforcement riding around, just busting their chops over
Right.
something so simple.
okay. So would the maker of the motion amend your motion to say we adopt, I make a motion to approve with the exception that the food truck must keep signage on site and remove the signage each night when they leave. Does that sound? Does that amend your second? So I have the same maker of the motion, Commissioner Farnsworth, I have the same seconder of the motion, Commissioner Norfleet. Any other comments or conversation about this from the dais? Mr. Martin?
I think we still need to debate it for another 30 minutes to remedy Brian's thoughts.
I got it.
He's got it.
I got it.
He's got it. All right, then we will go to public comment. Dallas, if you'll put our phone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of item 9 on your published agenda tonight. If you'd like to call in and talk to us about our food truck ordinance, which we have a motion properly seconded on the floor to accept staff's recommendation with one minor change pertaining to the signage. Now is the appropriate time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look at the bottom of the screen, see the hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol, let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment in the chamber, then we'll go to virtual comment. Do you have anybody live in the chamber who'd like to address the commission? Dallas, do we have any virtual comment? Hearing none, we'll come back for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. That will move us to item 10. This is block parties. Brian, you're having a busy night tonight. Again, ladies and gentlemen, for the background on this, if you don't know what a block party is, because we have all kinds of ordinances and we have all kinds of regulations. A block party is a relatively new concept. We've been working very closely with the Alachua County Sheriff's Office to address block parties. This is not the let's have a neighborhood close down a block, everybody pull out their barbecues and grill, and we work with the city for a permit. This is a new phenomenon where folks agree to a predetermined location in a neighborhood. These usually don't begin until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And the idea is people pull up into the street, they park in the street, they open up their vehicles, they play music, and they congregate and socialize. These have caused a lot of consternation for different communities around us. They've caused some issues here in our community. And I want to be clear, we have ordinances that address sound. We have ordinances that address blocking roadways. We have all kinds of ordinances that address different parts of this. But this ordinance in front of you puts all of those ordinances into a one-stop shop. It allows us to communicate with ASO and tell them that Newberry has an ordinance that addresses this. If people want to have this kind of a thing, there's a process by which you can go and get a permit and do it legally. You have to follow the process. And that's what you're voting on here tonight. So ASO has looked at this. We've worked with them to create this. And again, it is a one-stop shop for all of these issues at one time. And to be perfectly honest, when it comes to block parties, the trick is we have to get ASO there before it gets started. Because if there's 2,000 people there and then ASO shows up, then it's a real hard problem. We've had fatalities in Waldo. We've had fatalities down in Williston. We had a fatality in Gainesville. We had a shooting here in Newberry. Because once ASO, by the time ASO got there, it was already out of control. So this is a way for anyone who wants to host a block party. This is a way for them to do it legally, working with the sheriff's office, working with us. And I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder there, Brian. Take it away.
That was great. Thank you. So this is draft ordinance 2021-03. Basically, this ordinance allows for legal block parties. It's how to have a legal, traditional neighborhood block party. As the mayor said, over the last few years, there's been this proliferation of what's being called a block party, but in reality is generally the underlying circumstance is that it's a commercial endeavor that's taking advantage of a neighborhood to shut down streets, charge admission or donations, have DJ'd music and live music. It's very disruptive. They're advertised in advance. You know, they can have several hundred, if not more, in terms of crowds, and it's extremely disruptive to the actual residents of the neighborhood that don't generally really want to have any part of it. So staff in the past was directed by the commission to come up with an ordinance that allow for traditional neighborhood block parties, the ones that we all think of when you say the word block party, but prohibit the large scale commercial events that other communities have had experienced and had problems with. So what this allows for is the administrative authorization for special temporary use permit issued out of the planning office. So it wouldn't have to come back before the commission, which would be problematic and tedious for y'all and also for the applicant. Establishes the intent of the ordinance, provides definitions and what the permit requirements are, defines the specific locations where you could have a block party, and sets time of day and duration standards, and establishes prohibited activities in neighborhood block parties. And so, you know, the intent of the ordinance really is to provide, like I said, for the traditional neighborhood block party, make it as easy as possible to have those real neighborhood block parties while preventing the other. The ultimate goal is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. So defining a block party is a small scale, short duration event. It's not these big, large things. You know, it's organized by actual residents of the area, which requires the temporary closure of a city street so that they can actually have a party in the block. You know, it has limited duration, means 4 hours or less. Small scale means 200 persons or less, and that's a pretty big block party. It is not intended to draw attendance from outside. What happened there, Dallas? There we go. A permit is required, but like I said, we'll make it as easy administrative process as possible. And really the requirement for a permit is hinges upon whether or not they need to close the street. If they don't need to close the street down, then there would be no requirement for an STUP from the LDR administrator. It could just, you could have your neighborhood group gatherings. If you're not blocking the street, then you're not obviously not having, you don't have enough big of a crowd that's going to be an impediment. If no street closures required, then that STUP would be necessary. It's not to try to limit or prohibit or impede just small gatherings of local residents. It's meant to allow for that little bit larger gathering, but they want to close the street down and have grills up and barbecue and that kind of thing. So any local street can be safely closed. That can be safely closed. Larger streets, collector roads, or any carrying large volumes of traffic would not be eligible. It creates too much of a disruption. The time of day would be 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. But again, there's a 4-hour duration within that time frame. Fridays and Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays. Again, 4 hours or less. If they had and I would say if the applicant came in and they had a reasonable, hey, we need 5 hours or 6 hours, and here's why, and it was reasonable, that would be administratively approvable as well. It wouldn't cause a problem. Prohibited, any music, of course, that exceeds noise limit in the city's noise ordinances, charging admission or soliciting money to attend the block party. Now, of course, that, if everybody's pooling money to buy the supplies for the block party, that's not what that's talking about. It's talking about actual admission to attend. Sale of alcoholic beverages, again, doesn't mean that the neighbors couldn't partake on their own, but you're not setting up a vendor's booth to sell alcohol. And again, events that are designed to draw attendance from outside the general neighborhood. Neighborhood block parties don't advertise on social media to try to draw a larger and larger crowd. And so this was discussed at the March 1st Planning and Zoning Board hearing, but the board voted unanimously to recommend approval of draft ordinance 2021-3 to the City Commission.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Scott, you want to go ahead and read that ordinance for us?
Yes, sir. This is an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending the text of the City of Newberry Code of Ordinances and Land Development Regulations to amend section 14.10 entitled Special Permits for Temporary Uses and Chapter 94 entitled Traffic and Vehicles, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is passed. Ordinance number 2021-03, LDR 21-03, as read by title only.
Thank you, Scott.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
we have a motion. I have a motion from Commissioner Clark, a second from Commissioner Martin. Any other questions, comments to Brian? I'm seeing none. Now, so if you'll put our phone number up, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of item 10 on tonight's published agenda. This is ordinance allowing block parties under specific conditions. If you'd like to call in and make a comment or ask a question about this, we have a motion, probably second on the floor, to adopt staff's recommended ordinance. Now's the time to call in and make that comment. You can accomplish that by dialing the phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, simply look to the bottom of your screen. You'll see a little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to start with live comment from the chamber, and then we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have anybody live who'd like to address the commission on this? Seeing none. Do we have any virtual hands raised? Seeing none, we'll come back to the dais. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. That takes us to item 11, amending regulations for to provide streamlined administrative approval of accessory dwelling structures. I know we're all excited about this one, the P&Z. Extremely happy to see this move forward. Wendy, I think you're going to take the lead here.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We want to go ahead and put that presentation up. Dallas.
Experiencing that 30-second delay there.
Okay, so this application is The next slide shows you it's a streamlined administrative approval process that the city commission had recommended that staff go ahead and prepare. This is due to frequent variance applications that we've received. The Planning and Zoning Board has reviewed and the Board of Adjustment have reviewed for permanent or temporary structures that are accessory to the home that are in rear yards, and they're located either a few feet from or actually abutting the rear property line. And in all of those kinds of requests that have come before the board, they've been approved when those structures are actually abutting rear property lines that back up to non-residential property, and that non-residential property is designated as common open space or drainage conservation or a road or commercially zoned property. So it's definitely non-residential. And the next slide goes on to talk about in doing that kind of a thing with having a variance review and going through that process. It takes 2 public hearings, which can be 5 to 7 weeks, whereas a typical administrative approval process can be 1 to 5, just a few business days. The Board of Adjustment did direct staff to prepare the code amendments and provide for a streamlined staff administered process for these types of requests. So the next slide gives you the language that's proposed in the draft ordinance before you tonight. And first, to amend the supplementary regulations to actually say that administrative approval process is provided for these permanent and temporary accessory structure requests. Specifically, that it would be based on criteria that the land development regulation administrator would be authorized to administratively approve applications for the permanent or temporary accessory structures. And that would be for those that are in the rear yard setback up to the rear property line, provided that that rear property line abuts property that is non-residential, and that non-residential property is already publicly or privately owned or maintained as stormwater management, retention, or open space conservation, or as commercially zoned land. The next slide, the other section that's proposed for amendment goes through each of the residential type zoning districts and provides for that section under permitted accessory uses and structures, and gives language there that it would include the option of those structures that are administratively approved that are permanent or temporary accessory that are located in the rear yard, that those could be approved administratively based on that section in the supplementary regulations that we just showed you. So the next slide shows you that the Planning and Zoning Board did hear this application and recommended approval to the City Commission of Ordinance 2021-10. And the next slide provides you staff's recommendation to approve the ordinance on first reading. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Ms. Wendy. Scott, you want to go ahead and read that ordinance in?
Yes, sir. This is ordinance number 2021-10, LDR 21-07, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending the text of the city of Newberry Land Development Regulations as amended. To amend supplementary district regulations, section 4.2.4, entitled Accessory Uses and Structures, and zoning districts, sections 4.4.3, 4.5.3, 4.6.3, 4.7.3, 4.8.3, 4.9.3, 4.9A.3, 4.18.3, 4.19.4, 4.19, 4.20.3, 4.21.3, each entitled Permitted Accessory Uses and Structures, providing for administrative approval to allow permanent and temporary structures within required rear yard setbacks based upon specified criteria, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is pass ordinance 2021-10 as read by title only.
Scott, I don't think I've told you how much I appreciate you reading all of those tonight. Do I have a motion? I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, and a second from Commissioner Clark. Any comments or questions for staff on the motion on the floor? Dice, all right, Brian, will you put our phone number, Dallas, will you put our phone number up? Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of item 11 on tonight's published agenda. This is about amending regulations providing for streamlined administrative approval of accessory structures within rear yard setbacks. We are hoping that this really helps our residents when it comes to the ever pressing issue of sheds in the city of Newberry. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on the motion on the floor, which is to approve staff's ordinance, now is the appropriate time to do so. You can do that by dialing the phone number on the screen. That'll get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look at the bottom of your screen, see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol, let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to start with live comment, then we'll go to virtual comment. Do everyone live in the chamber would like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, do I have any virtual comment? Hearing none, we'll come back for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously, and that will move us on to agenda items. First on the docket is our opioid task force vacancies. I'm not sure that I've had much chance to chat with the commission about the opioid task force. We were gung ho and really cruising right up until the shutdown. And the shutdown has caused some of our members to have to reprioritize and not be able to continue. So we have some vacancies that need to be filled. You have the applications, which are pretty short in your backup material. We ask people, do they live in the city of Newberry? Do they have any experience in the healthcare industry that they could help bring to bear? Those kinds of things. So, is Amy still here? Mommy, I sent the backup material. I can't remember right now if we need 3 or 4 seats filled. Is it? I figure she would be able to answer quicker than I would be able to find it in the backup material. 3. That's what I think. It's 3. Okay, so basically, the way we've approached the opioid task force is you guys approved a 7-member board. We have asked everybody who wants to participate to not allow the fact of being an official voting member to deter them. We can have our official voting members and we can appoint other folks as alternates. One of the things that is still a struggle at this point is finding meeting times where everybody can make it. We're doing Zoom meetings, which you would normally think helps, but all we've done in a Zoom world is just add more meetings to the day. So now we're doing 15 meetings instead of 8 meetings. And for the opioid task force, we're not deciding necessarily on controversial things. What we need are all hands on deck to host events, raise awareness, those kinds of things. So if the commission accepts that, then we could appoint 3 official voting members, and we could appoint everybody else on this as an alternate who would then be able to vote if someone is absent, if someone can't attend. Well, we voted on our mission statement, which is we want to focus on the prevention of addiction in children. We are not focused on rehabilitation. We're not focused on those kinds of things. We vote on, do we want to do a walk to raise awareness, or do we want to have maybe kind of a bounce house event? So that's what I say. I mean, it's an unfunded committee. So the things that they vote on are how best to go about raising awareness, how best to go about addressing this issue. Our plan right now, and I believe this will be our strategy when we come back, is Alachua County Sheriff's Office has a program called RAD Kids. That's a ready-made program. You're not reinventing the wheel. It's a proven success rate. It's in place, and it approaches the child holistically. So it empowers the child to know when an adult or another child is trying to get them to do something that's not healthy or unsafe for them. And it teaches them strategies to say no and to find an adult that they trust to notify. It's a 2-year program. You can implement it at 10 to 15-minute segments inside the classroom. So, but a school has to become a RAD Kids school. And right now, Alachua County Sheriff's Office doesn't fund that fully. So our plan and goal is to approach ASO and to approach the school board and see if we can change that dynamic and get RAD for schools all across Alachua County. If you don't know, Alachua County in 2018, I haven't seen the numbers for 2020, had the second highest rate of opioid addiction among adolescents in the state of Florida. It had the highest rate of adolescent suicide, which is linked to addiction in the state of Florida. And that's kind of what started Newberry's focus on, we want to see what we can do in our own backyard to help address this, what is a national crisis. President Trump talked about the opioid crisis many times, and he funded the fight really well. So one of the things that we might look at is who can help us access that funding, who's involved in other government entities that can help bring pressure to bear, those kinds of things. So that's kind of my background information on this. And I certainly be, I know some of the people who have made application, and I can certainly tell you, if any of these folks have been mentioned by the task force as someone they hope that you appoint, I'd certainly be willing to share that. You may have folks that you want to put forth as the 3 voting members and then accept everyone else as an alternate. That would be fine as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Martin.
do we have to define the voting members? Is that something that they can do on their own? If
That's a good
they
question.
make their own executive board out of the balance of the participants or something like that?
Scott, can the task force be given this backup material and be empowered to make their own decisions?
Yes.
Okay. What's the commission's thought on that? Would you rather
Well,
pass this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to tell anybody no that wants to take on this sort of an animal.
That's my thought.
And more power to them.
When we have official Newberry boards, we have to have I'm forgetting the phrase, but we have to have a format. And almost all of our voting boards are limited to 5 or 7. So that's how we got to a 7-person board. But even from the get-go, we took the same stance that Commissioner Martin just articulated. Anybody that wants to get involved in this, we don't want to say no. And like I said, I mean, all of these are community driven. The more people you have helping out, is the better. So I think the opioid task force would certainly be very appreciative of you guys just giving them the backup material and saying, we support whoever you want to make as the official voters and whoever you want to define as the alternates. And I would pass along the gratitude.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Martin.
yeah, I'd like to make a motion to that effect if we are at the appropriate position to do that. And yeah, empower the task force to do what they see as fit.
Okay. I have a motion from Commissioner Martin to empower the task force to appoint the members. I have a second to that motion from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments or questions from the dais? I just want to take, before we call for a vote, I want to thank everybody who took the time. Most of these folks saw the call and took it upon themselves to apply. A couple of these folks were reached out to make sure they knew it, but almost all of them were folks who just saw the email and said, I want to help out. So, and I agree with you. They all have talents in one field or the other. Dallas, if you'll put our phone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of agenda item 12. This is about our opioid task force vacancies. We have a motion, probably second on the floor, to send all of the applications to the opioid task force and empower them to differentiate between who the voting members will be and who the alternates will be. If you'd like to call in and make a comment or have a question on the motion on the floor, now is the appropriate time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look to the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to start with live comment, then we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have anybody here in the chamber tonight that'd like to comment on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, do we have any virtual hands raised, Alice? Seeing none, we'll come back for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. That takes us to item 13. Mr. Jones, you're going to talk to us about the City Hall re-roof project award.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The City Hall re-roof project award, where the recommended action tonight is to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Rogers Roofing Corp. Doing business as Professional Roof Systems in the amount of $26,900 for the project. And number two, authorize the city manager to approve change orders not to exceed 25% of the contract amount. This project was programmed in the city's capital improvement budget for replacement due to the condition of the existing shingles. We put this out in February. Request for proposals 2021-01 was posted for this multi-level roof replacement system. And the bids were received back March 10th, 2021. 2 bids were received. These 2 bids were reviewed and determined to be responsive and responsible. Based on this review, Rogers Roofing Corp. Doing business as Professional Roof System was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder with a base bid of $26,900 for this multi-level roof system. As part of the process, staff included some add alternate list of unit costs for repairs to the roof deck or support system in the event that deterioration or code issues are discovered when we remove the shingles. And funding is, as I said, is included in the approved budget this year. And staff recommends that the commission authorize city manager to execute this contract with Rogers Roofing Corp. In the amount of $26,900. And once again, authorize city manager to approve change orders not to exceed 25% of the contract amount to address any unforeseen issues with the roof deck or support system. And I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Do we have any questions for Mr. Jones? Mr. Martin?
What was the budget amount line item to begin with?
I believe we have a total of $37,500 budgeted, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? Commissioner Clark? Is your mic on?
Yeah, I know where they out and where they come from. Low bid don't always mean best bid, but where is it?
Mr. Mayor, this company
right on.
out of Dunellen, and they're actually the same company that just did the municipal building.
Jamie, I tell you were happy with that re-roof?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we were. One of the reasons we put the add alternates in, though, until you peel the shingles back and see what the deck is, you don't know if you don't have issues. We did have some issues with the municipal building that we had to address, and we anticipate that that's potentially possible with the re-roof of City Hall. It also includes the walkway that ties City Hall to the municipal building as part of the project. So you will have one shingle look and all the way across the City Hall complex.
Okay. Other questions from the dais? Anyone want to make a motion? I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Norfleet. I have a second from Commissioner Martin. Any more comments or questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, Dallas, if you put our phone number up, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of item 13. This is about accepting a bid for the City Hall re-roof project. We have a motion, probably second on the floor to move forward. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on that motion, now's the time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing the phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look at the bottom of the screen, see a little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol, let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment from the chamber, and then we'll move to virtual comment. Do we have anybody here in the chamber that'd like to talk to the commission on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have any virtual comment, Dallas? Any virtual hand raised? Seeing none, we'll come back. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That will move us on to item 14, which is wastewater treatment facility capacity, and that is the manager. You finally get to work tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that I am taking the lead on this item, but this is a joint project that involves me, it involves utilities department and the planning department significantly. And this is an item that the recommended action is simply to receive a presentation. I've developed a kind of short PowerPoint, and I believe that the commission all has copies on this. And I just want to say to begin with that Mr. Mayor, that we developed this presentation for the commission just out of a sense within the community. I think if we go back the last 6 months, the commission has heard more planning, quasi judicial and legislative items over that 6-month period than ever in the history of Newberry. I mean, Brian is averaging about 10 items per meeting. Each one of these items get heard at minimum 3 times. There's a lot of information in the past 6 months that has come at the board. And I sense within the community that there is a concern about can Newberry withstand all this growth that's going on. So we developed, Brian's team developed these maps that kind of show where we have developing happening. It's color coded as to what's, got some entitlements and what's under development and what's just in a pre-application review. And if you count up all the units, 850, 260, 1,040, 500, 999, and 1,450, it is unnerving. And so I wanted to kind of just spend a few minutes with the commission going through how we look at concurrency and whether we have capacity to permit all this development to come forward. So I'm going to find this presentation somewhere right here. And Mr. Mayor, I encourage people to just kind of interrupt, and we are aware. It says I'm sharing a screen. Is it showing up anywhere?
We have a blank shared screen.
All right, let me
But it
back
is
up
sharing.
and see what's happening. I'll stop the share and try it again. Share the screen. Pick,
You got to pick the screen you want to share.
and I did,
All right.
and there it is. Hopefully,
Yeah.
there it is.
There we
All
go.
right, so now I will. Yes. Oh man. I would suggest that one of our elected officials keep his job as an elected official. So, Mr. Mayor, we'll kind of buzz right through this. Again, the recommended action is simply to receive the presentation. Mr. Mayor, talk with concurrency. State law used to be way more uptight about concurrency prior to 2008. Then a gentleman by the name of Rick Scott was elected Florida's governor, and he passed, worked with the legislature to pass some legislation that really pulled back on concurrency. But we monitor concurrency, or we're supposed to be looking at concurrency along 7 items. There's roads, schools, water treatment, wastewater treatment, stormwater, solid waste, and park. Some of those we monitor, but we're not responsible for. Concurrency on roads, we're only responsible on local roads. And I can tell you that almost without exception, all of the local roads have tons of available capacity. A 2-lane road that's serving a neighborhood will withstand, thousands of trips per day, and we don't approach that in any of our neighborhoods. So, road concurrency, that was one of the things that took a big hit when Governor Scott kind of preempted what they used to call the Department of Community Affairs, and that got gutted, and road concurrency kind of went by the wayside. It's not monitored as much anymore. Schools is monitored by the school board of Alachua County. We don't try to get in there and tell them how to do it. We do report to the commission where they are. And I believe that we're going to have the school board in to present both the planning and zoning board and the city commission their perspective on school concurrency. When a development is being considered by the board, that we will report where the school board is with concurrency prior to us making a finding or adopting legislation to pass a development. Water and wastewater treatment are really our sweet spot of the things that we have to monitor. And my battery is running low because I didn't plug it in. And Mr. Mayor, we can add water treatment capacity in year and a half's time. And really, the city has plenty of well capacity. Where we're kind of running short is storage capacity. So water treatment is not the highest level of monitoring for us. Wastewater treatment it takes generally 4 to 5 years to add wastewater treatment plant capacity, and it's expensive. We can add 1 million gallons per day of water treatment capacity for about $1 million. To add 1 million gallons per day of wastewater treatment capacity is minimum 10 million and can approach 16, 18 million, depending on the level of treatment in the state. And the people that regulate us are leaning more towards the higher levels of treatment. Stormwater developments are required to treat their own stormwater, so it's not really an issue for us. We don't have a lot of one basin for the city that serves everybody. Solid waste goes up to Jacksonville, and there's tons of capacity in that landfill. And then parks, all of our approved developments are required to provide their own recreation or green space area. So really for us, it gets down to water and wastewater treatment. Some terminology here. Development order, we use that terminology a lot. And I'd want to reinforce for the board that a development order is any order or notice of proposed state or regional government agency, which is or will affect or will have effect of granting, denying, or granting with conditions applications for a development permit and includes zoning of a specific parcel. So in the transition between annexation and building something on a site, we probably adopt 2 or 3 development orders. A rezoning application is a development order, and a development order may give a property entitlements to build houses. We talk about entitlements a lot, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be able to move forward with your development. The guarantee that says you're going to be able to move forward with your development is what we refer to as a final development order. For us, the city of Newberry has 2 final development orders. One is the approval of a final plat, and that's for residential development. And for non-residential, it's the site and development plan approval. So when these developments come in and they're 1,000 units and they get entitlements for 1,000 units, and then they come to you tonight, like, was it Countryway Town Center? Phase 5 came today. They got construction plan approval. They still don't have concurrency approval at our wastewater plant. The developer's at risk that we may mysteriously run out of wastewater treatment plant capacity before he goes to final plat. Now, the risk of that is super low because we have tons of available capacity at our wastewater plant today as we sit. So I just wanted to kind of get out there for the commission that the trigger word for monitoring capacity for us is final development orders. We can rezone property all day long and not worry about running out of treatment plant capacity. Probably a good idea to start planning and thinking about it. But, and I guess the story I tell staff is once upon a time in the late 70s, because when you get zoning rights, you rarely develop with the intensity that you think you might. So once upon a time in the late 70s, there was a development of regional impact that occurred in the city of Alachua, and they were approved for 5,500 residential units that included 6-story apartments. So at the time that Alachua approved it, its wastewater plant could handle about 200,000 gallons per day, and 5,500 residential units was a couple of MGD of flow. So here we are 40 years later. That development was Turkey Creek, and it is done. It is full. There's no more units to be put in there. It finally developed out at about 1,200 units, so about a quarter of what they originally planned. And Alachua today has a treatment plant capacity of 1 MGD. They never did build what the 5,500 units needed. And so giving someone zoning entitlements and being concerned that we don't have the wastewater capacity for that, I think is premature. I think that we need to be thinking about it, but most of these developments take 20 years to develop out. And in some cases, like that particular DRI, it took 40 years to develop. So that's what's going to happen in Newberry as well. So when we are tracking concurrency, I went through the difference between vesting and concurrency and development orders. We monitor this, and we've developed worksheets that help us keep up with where we are. So the first thing in concurrency is whether you're going to have treatment plant capacity. Is this, did you want to know what your total available capacity is? Starts with what are your current flows? You know, our treatment plant right now has a permitted capacity of 499,000 gallons per day. And the first thing we need to know is, well, what's the average flow through there? Because we can't give that away. We can't give that to some developer. And so Jamie and his team measure flow every day, and we keep a running number. And the wastewater plant is currently flowing a little over, right about half of that capacity, somewhere around 250,000 gallons per day. But we monitor it. We also look at previously issued concurrency, how much is reserved. You know, if we approved Oak Park Village, which was 120 units, those units are reserved on the books. And so we count that towards the available capacity at the plant. So we know what our 250,000 gallons per day of regular flow is, plus the capacity that we've given away to Oak Park. And that tells us how much is available for what's being considered tonight in a final development order. And tracking that is always a big deal because everybody that has concurrency, like Oak Park, whenever they get a building, a certificate of occupancy, we take them off of the concurrency reserved for capacity list and we add them into, now they're in the daily flow. So Jamie and Brian every month are going through these worksheets to decide, well, how many building permits have been, how many COs were issued in each of the subdivisions that were initially asked for capacity or have capacity reservations. And that determines, you know, the sum of that determines what our available capacity for new development is. So here's just an example of what our worksheet looks like. This is working. We estimate up at the top, you can see 250 gallons per day per ERU. I know one of our engineers today said, well, it's somewhere between 250 and 300 gallons per day per ERU. Well, not in Newberry. Every ERU is 250 gallons. It's not 249. It's not 241. It is 250. And that's how we reserve capacity. And you can see that down at the bottom under the columns of what we've actually done, 2018, 19, and 20, you can see the actuals. We CO'd 96 homes, 86 homes, and 108 homes that connected to our sewer system. So we CO'd about 20 more homes that connected to a septic tank, but those homes don't take up capacity at our wastewater plant. So we're averaging right around 100 homes a year for a 3-year running average. And so then we talk to developers and their engineers about what their plans are for moving forward. And it's a crystal ball best guess, but I can tell you they're always optimistic. So you can see just based on the feedback we've got, we went from an average of 100, well, you can see an average of 97, that well, next year we're projected to do 131, which is pretty robust. So almost a 30% increase. The year after that, our developers are telling us we're going to go to 237. Well, that's a 100% increase in the history of small cities and wastewater plants. That's never ever happened, but that's how we're projected. No one increases by 100% in 1 year. 237 COs is no big deal, but 100% increase in 1 year is pretty big. Following year, we're at 850, at 280. And then in 2024, the city of Archer thinks they'll bring 500 units online. So we've got a space for them. And these aren't necessarily everything that's got a certificate of concurrency for this. This is just a planning to see what it looks like type workshop sheet. So you can just see how we think how much flow is going to come online every year. And then we draw that in a graph.
Hang on 1 second, Mike, before
Sure.
can you go back one slide?
I will try. Mr. Mayor.
So basically what we're saying here is that if every developer grows at the rate that they think that we've talked about, everybody develops at the rate that they think that they will, we still have plenty of capacity even in 24, if we work out this regional waste facility and Archer comes online, we're still in manageable shape here. Is that what I'm seeing on this graph?
Well, you'll see that in the graph as to where it, under this exact scenario, we would miss.
We would miss.
We would miss, but I can show, I've got a couple other scenarios, and that's the nice thing about the beauty of our worksheet. We
But
can
if
run
Archer's
scenarios.
not, if Archer doesn't come in,
We're
right?
golden. We're
Okay,
golden.
so and we hear this in the community a lot, right? Because you hear, oh, you're building 900 senior homes. That's unmanageable growth. But what you're showing us here is all of the work that this city does to make sure that it is manageable growth. Because what we have here in this map that you provided, and I have a digital copy of this that will be the next post in my sort of series of visioning posts in Newberry, Florida, is everything that's under construction, thinking about being under construction, asking to think about being under construction. And that's where you're plugging this in. So, and to your earlier point that, you know, these developments take 10, 20, 30, 40 years sometimes, with the exception of one and maybe two at this point, developments that are under construction right now. All of these developments were approved 10, 15 years ago by, maybe Monty was here, but everybody else, no one else was here when these were approved. And for the last 10 years, they've all pretty much sat, maybe the last 8 years, they all sat kind of just not doing anything, waiting for the market to come back. Now the market's back, they're going gung ho. So if these numbers here are based on this current rate of growth, never experiencing the economic downturn that we experienced in 2006, turn of the millennium, I think we had a dip, those kinds of market forces.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So this, you know, like I said, in my career, I've never seen the type of growth that was projected in that last table, and I'm not certifying that because I think people would come after my engineering license if I said, yeah, we're going to do 100% growth in 1 year. So, Mr. Mayor, here's the curve that we look at to see what's really going to happen. So the blue line on that is our plant capacity. As you can see right now, it's just under 500,000 gallons per day. It says 0.50, but it's actually 0.499, and that's strategic. The plant itself can actually be re-rated up to 560,000 gallons per day. Jamie is going through a permit process right now. We could pull that out in 6 months' time and buy 60,000 gallons per day of additional capacity. And then if you follow that curve on out, you can see that when we get to FY25, it jumps up from 560,000 gallons per day up to 1 million gallons a day. I project that's where we would end up. We're doing a planning study. It may say we need 1.2 million or 1.5 million. If we build a regional treatment plant, it could go up a little higher than that. But I'm just showing you that blue line, as long as the orange line stays below the blue line, we've got capacity available. Then the orange line shows our projected flows based on our average daily flows that Jamie's recording every day and the development table that we just looked at. So if we slow down the number of COs that are being issued every year to those developments, that curve will be less rapid. So the way it stands now with that super aggressive rate, including bringing on the city of Archer with 500 units in 1 year, then we would run out of capacity in 2024. So just to look at a couple of other scenarios here, and that shows when we would run out. Looking at a couple of other scenarios, if we don't worry about all those developments, and we just say we're going to add homes at a growth rate of 5% a year moving into the future for the next 10 years, which has been our current growth rate for the last 5 or 10 years, 5% a year, the curve would look like this. So we would get to 2025 and we would still have an available capacity of 200,000 gallons per day, which is about 40% of our treatment plant. So, 4 years from now, we'd only be at 60% capacity when we plan to bring new treatment capacity online. So that's with a 5% growth rate. If we take it up to 10% growth rate, table changes. You can see the growth rate is up there in the second row, just floating just above 10%. Then you can see that the curve is a little steeper. And in 2025, when we add new capacity, instead of having 220,000 gallons per day of available capacity, it's 190,000 gallons a day of available capacity. That's the bottom row down there. The 0.190 is 190,000 gallons per day of capacity. So 10% is double our current growth rate. The city has never experienced 10% growth rate over a 5-year period of time. Rarely do cities see any kind of growth rate. I'd say the average growth rate, the average healthy growth rate in the state of Florida today is about 2.5%. So we're at 5%, we're double that, we feel that pressure. And this curve says if we double that even, this is, would we run out of capacity at our wastewater plant? And then finally, Mr. Mayor, we're gonna quadruple our growth rate, our current growth rate at a growth rate of 20%, and would show you that 2025, if we bring the treatment plant, actually it's 2026, we bring it online at 2026, we would still have 125,000 gallons per day of available capacity, not run out of capacity. So, Mr. Mayor, my takeaway from all this, or my ask for the commission, is simply that staff is watching every one of these concurrency things. We're more concerned about capacity than you could ever imagine. It's a weekly conversation with our planning department, our utilities department. We've already started the wastewater treatment plant expansion process. You guys authorized that study a few months ago. We've got a consulting firm working on the first steps with that, which of that was development of a facilities plan and a preliminary engineering report. That's what we use to go get funding and to get a permit from DEP to build a treatment plant. Once we finish that planning phase, we would move into design. That planning phase would tell us how big of a treatment plant we need and what we think it'll cost. Then we would move into design. The planning phase will take about a year. The design will take a year to a year and 4 months. And once we have design, we will be ready to bid and build. And then I think we can watch what's happened. If growth rate is slower, then we let that sit on the shelf for a year, because we talk about, you'll hear Jamie say all the time, we want to bring capacity online just in time. You don't want to bring 1 million gallons worth of capacity online when you still have 500,000 of unfilled capacity at your treatment plant, because that means your ratepayers get to pay all that debt service. And what we want to do is let the debt service that comes with that expansion come, the expansion come just in time as this new development needs it. And we'll let the people that are pulling building permits for new development, when they pay their capacity charges, and we talk about that every year in budget, people are unhappy about paying $3,700 a unit for a capacity charge. That's how we pay the debt service on these wastewater treatment plant loans that we get. $3,700 per building permit goes there, and we can make a debt service payment on a wastewater treatment plant. So, Mr. Mayor, the last thing is another way of looking at growth and wastewater plant capacity is not monitoring developments, but it's just straight monitoring your population. Our consulting engineer would prefer to do this than what we were doing. And so we've taken some time to look at those growth curves. I've done a 30-year growth curve here based on our current population, which was 6,800 last March was the number that we've got. We've been growing at 5% a year. If you're going to do a 30-year plan, I think it's unreasonable to suggest you'll grow 5% a year for 30 years. So we projected 1.5% over 30 years, 3% and 5%. Gives you an idea of what Newberry's population would look like in 2050. I think we'll be somewhere between the 1.5% and the 3%. So we should be in the 11 to 15,000 people range. Again, I think that's a good sanity check for whenever you see all of this, you think, oh my gosh, it's going to be 50, 60. We're going to be passing Gainesville. or as big as the villages. Even with healthy growth rates, we're talking a 20 to 30-year period before we're looking at 12 and 15,000 people. Kind of helps us understand what we should be looking like. If a member of the Alachua County Board of Commission says, what do you want to be when you grow up? What's your population going to be? We study this. We just don't always answer questions that we think are rhetorical, but we do have a handle on what we're going to look like when we grow up. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the presentation. Again, it was just a briefing, but available for questions if the commission has any.
Commission have any questions? Mike, we do appreciate that, all the time that staff put into that. I do think it is well timed because I'm sure that you guys have been fielding the same questions. When people say, well, have they thought about the traffic on Newberry Road? Have they thought about this development? I think we are the front line of defense at calming that down. If other governing bodies around the county did the work that our staff did to track these numbers and to prepare and plan, then we wouldn't be seeing some of the other issues that are happening around us. So it is this kind of information really, really important. Someone says, well, I heard you just approved an 800 home development. Have you thought about the traffic? Have you thought about the schools? Have you thought about wastewater? And, you know, I get just as offended when I see somebody on social media say that we've done no planning and they approving all this and they haven't done one plan. And we produce all of this stuff on a continual basis to make sure that we project for conservative estimates, we project for crazy estimates. And that really is a testament to staff. It's a testament to you. It's a testament to the folks who came before you. It's a testament to this board and the boards that came before. That has never, ever been true in the city of Newberry, that we just willy-nilly, go build a development. We haven't thought about the roads at all, go build that development. We have no idea about what's that going to do to our schools. It's never been the case. And in my mind, I think that shows a willful ignorance on behalf of residents who make those statements, because you have to actively try to never watch a meeting, never contact a commissioner, never sit in a workshop to utter that statement. Well, you guys haven't even thought about this, because clearly that's what these meetings primarily are for, is to think about all of these kinds of issues. So I understand that in the past year, there's been a lot of developments and a lot of folks are starting to feel the pressure. 5% rate is a high pressure situation. I get that. But to say we haven't thought about it, to say we haven't tried to plan, is just inaccurate. And I probably feel the way that M3 Development feels when someone calls a $15 million RV resort a trailer park. I probably have the same kind of reaction. No, we do plan. We do think about this. So thank you for that well-timed presentation. And I'm very glad to see, and I'm sure we're going to get into it in the next one, that we can offer some capacity to our neighbors in this wastewater regional facility if we get there. So Mike, you want to lead us into 15?
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to introduce Luke Tia. Luke works with CERCAP. They are an entity. I'll have to get Luke to explain exactly what CERCAP stands for, but Luke's role in the world is to help small communities plan for water and wastewater treatment facilities. And he's partnering with us to utilize the resources available to him to help us get there. Now, he's been engaged with us on our regional planning concept, and he was tasked with putting together a PowerPoint presentation that we could show other communities about the benefits of regional treatment plants. It's kind of an explanation, shows the benefits. There's a number of ways you could do regional treatment. And I want to also express to Luke my appreciation. He's been online this entire meeting to do this presentation. And Luke, ordinarily, we try to get our guests on early, but we've had a number of guests. The city manager items typically come less because I'm going to be here for the whole meeting, come last. because I'm going to be here for the whole meeting. So I really appreciate you hanging in there and look forward to the presentation that you're about to share with the commission. I'll give the commission a heads up. What we're asking for in the recommended motion is to receive Luke's presentation, which is one we'll be sharing with other communities as well, and to adopt resolution 21-08, authorizing the mayor, the city manager, and staff to engage in discussions and communicate with nearby communities in developing a regional advanced treatment facility. Now, I want to say, if you feel deja vu, like Mike, we've already authorized this, we know that. But our funding partners who say we think we can pull together funding for a regional treatment plant concept have asked for these resolutions. I believe Archer has passed a similar resolution. I'm not sure if High Springs has passed the resolution or not, but they're interested. Trenton is scheduled to hear this resolution later this year. Later this month, not this year. And so our time frame was to get these resolutions put together in spring. So we felt like we've had full authorization from the board, but we've never formally asked you to consider a resolution. So we're asking you to do that tonight as soon as Luke is complete with this presentation and we've answered all your questions. I'll turn it over to you, Luke.
Welcome, sir, and thank you for waiting here to the end.
Thank you everyone for having me. Let me share this screen here. Okay, you guys see it?
We've got you.
Okay. So I'll let you know, SARECAP, it's a long abbreviation. It's the Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project. And as Mike said, the purpose of SARECAP is to help rural communities improve their quality of life, primarily through improving water and wastewater systems. And we're very excited to be working with Newberry. And in this presentation, I'm going to be telling you about regional partnerships, why they could be beneficial to the city of Newberry, and potential regional wastewater systems for what we're calling Florida's Lower Santa Fe River and Swanee River region. So the regional vision that we're talking about is a wastewater system for the communities within the Lower Santa Fe River and Swanee River region. So what does this region consist of? From this list of candidate cities, you can see that it stretches from as far north as Fort White to as far south as Williston. And this is just a list of candidates. Of course, it's not an official plan. Before we talk about this regional vision more, we'll take some time to talk about what are regional partnerships, how they can benefit communities, and what challenges they face, and what are the steps in creating them. So a regional partnership is defined as any collaboration between multiple communities in a geographic area for their mutual benefit. Partnerships can be called many things. They can be collaborations, it can be regionalization or shared services. So it's important to remember that partnerships are not limited to just combining systems together. There are also other types of partnerships. These could include informal cooperation, where there's assistance but no contracts. Then there's contractual assistance, where there are contracts, but they're not under control. They're under the control of each system. Shared governance, where there's a shared entity, but the systems are still independent. And finally, ownership transfer, where a system is combined with new or existing entities. Here are the 4 types of partnerships. They're shown on a spectrum of increasing transfer of responsibility. And here's some examples of each. For informal cooperation, that might include sharing equipment or bulk supply purchases. Contractual assistance could include purchasing water. Shared governance could include joint power authorities. And ownership transfer would include acquisition and physical interconnection. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of each type of partnership, and how can you determine which one is best for your community? Well, first of all, looking at informal cooperation, this is a relatively easy type of partnership. and it's able to create economies of scale, but it's not as good at addressing larger problems. With contractual assistance, you can deal with more significant problems, but it ultimately relies on the capacity of another system. In shared governance, it may be politically challenging to develop this, but it's a good way of increasing your resources and expertise. And then with ownership transfer, this has the ability to address the most major issues, but it can be a challenge for communities often who are afraid of losing control. So we've talked about how partnerships can help communities and how they can share resources and benefit each other, but what are the specific benefits? One of the key concepts related to regional partnerships is economies of scale. You can define economies of scale as decreased cost and improved quality coming from an increase of resources, systems working together. Here are three main types of benefits. They can be categorized as regulatory compliance, building technical, managerial, or financial capacity, and protecting environmental resources. Partnerships can help meet regulations by sharing resources to meet and achieve compliance. They can also help regulatory agencies because they have fewer systems to manage. And partnerships can lead to cost savings, and then you can use those savings to be able to meet the regulations. There are many technical benefits, and that includes sharing fixed costs, improving infrastructure, and sharing material and personnel resources. As for managerial costs, communities can save also on fixed costs, and other benefits may include making it easier to find board members because you may have systems that are already connected, improving customer service, or sharing information between systems. And partnerships can build financial capacity by increasing their revenue, by having a larger pool of ratepayers, and enabling increased access to funding. Many funding agencies look more favorably upon regional projects. And finally, partnerships can help protect environmental resources. They can protect water resources, they can decrease septic tank discharges and improve overall system reliability. So now let's talk about how different partnerships may overcome challenges. Here are just a few examples of solutions to some political, financial, and technical challenges. Political challenges can be overcome by removing distrust and finding common goals. Financial challenges may be overcome by educating citizens about finances and rates. And lastly, technical challenges can be overcome through working with third-party assistance or exploring innovative ways of partnerships, such as those not limited by geography. So putting this all together, we can see that there are three essential characteristics for successful partnerships. Those are leadership, a well-facilitated process, and a shared vision and needs. You need strong leadership in order to remove egos and me attitudes. Leadership should be open and decided at a local level. A facilitated process means good communication, public participation, and transparency. And a shared vision is a good way to create trust, buy-in, sense of ownership, and having a common agenda. Lastly, you need to know how to create a regional partnership and the steps involved. This is just a quick overview, and it's just one way of explaining the process. You could look at it in many different ways. So the first step of creating a partnership is to identify the stakeholders and their common needs. Next, you want to evaluate their options. This is like the different types of partnerships we looked at, and you can also consider different options within each type. And finally, you want to negotiate agreements and implement the plan itself. So now returning to our question at the beginning, is Newberry's potential regional partnerships? We'll close by exploring some of the different partnership possibilities. So we can see that we have different types of partnerships. For example, some informal cooperation, informal partnerships may include sharing equipment, operators of purchasing chemicals together, contractual assistance through contracted sale of effluent treatment is another regional type of system that could happen on a wholesale basis. And another possibility is the creation of a regional facility with shared governance. And these are a few of the questions and the types of examples that you're going to have to look at going forward. And the presentation has my information as well as contacts with Woodard and Curran, Newberry's other consultants. So thank you very much. I can answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. Questions from the dais? Commissioner Norfleet.
Are the counties going to be involved in this? Yes.
What was the question of the county?
Are the counties, if you're talking with Trenton, Gilchrist County, and Alachua County?
Mike, do you know, as the county intimated anything to us that they'd be willing to help Trenton get that line here?
No, sir, the counties, because, I mean, Alachua County is aware and they support it. I'm actually presenting for a forum that they're holding at the end of April. So they're very supportive, but they're not in the utility business per se. So they're going to try to be enablers, but in terms of partnering, they haven't suggested anything. As far as I know, Gilchrist County kind of in the same boat. They don't provide a utility service, so they would be supportive as encouragers. But the city of Trenton, who we've spoken to, is very interested. They feel like that they're close to capacity and don't have a good plan for where to move forward on with the treatment plant. So they like this plan. A big benefit to Trenton is that they're very close to the spring shed. We're almost 20 miles from the spring shed. They're much closer. They're probably 8 to 10 miles from the spring shed. So if the regional treatment facility is located due east of them, then that just puts more distance between their nutrients, their nitrogen, their phosphorus, which are the problems for the spring shed, and we'll all benefit by being able to afford a high level treatment that removes nutrients that individually we may not be able to afford if each of us try to make it go it alone.
I know that I've talked to the BOCC, and to a T, they're very excited about this. I know that I've talked to Chuck and Keith about this. I think we've had some conversations with the Water Management Board. So I think that there's going to be some funding sources to help out with this. It was one of his very first slides, kind of the idea about when you all partner together, instead of us all going after the same small grants, we collectively go after one big grant. But there may be opportunities for us to find other partnerships with the county to make this happen as well. Any other questions, comments? We do need a motion. Scott, do you have a resolution to read in?
I certainly do, Mr. Mayor. This is resolution 2021-08. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, authorizing the mayor, city manager, and staff to engage in discussions and furtherance of exploring the possibility of a regional advanced wastewater treatment facility, making certain findings of fact in support of the city, exploring the concept of a regional advanced wastewater treatment facility, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is passed resolution number 2021-08 as read by title only.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Any further questions, comments from the dais on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. Dallas, if you put our phone number up, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of item 15 on tonight's published agenda. This is about our very exciting regional wastewater treatment facility. It's generated quite a stir in our area. We have a motion, probably second on the floor, to enter into the resolution. If you would like to call in, make a comment on the motion on the floor, now is the appropriate time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing the phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, simply look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol. Let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure that you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment from the chamber, then we'll move to virtual comment. Do we have anybody live in the chamber who'd like to address the motion on the floor? Seeing none, we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have any virtual hands raised? Seeing none, we'll have one comment from the manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to ask the commission to consider one change. That
Okay.
we title this resolution 2021-09 instead of 08, because I put this resolution together in the absence of Amy, who keeps up with those numbers, and I made a big old mistake.
Okay. Would the maker of the motion amend your motion? Would the seconder amend the second? Okay. So with that minor scrivener's error that will show up in the manager's evaluation, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously, and that will take us to comment. City manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Luke again. I appreciate, it's a great presentation, Luke. I appreciate you spending most of the night with us, seeing about the fascinating things that go on in Newberry. Appreciate you, and we'll be working together. Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to just mention to the commission, Jamie's running point on this project, and they hold weekly meetings with our consultant about where the status of our planning documents. And so it's a lot of work. He's got a lot of projects underway right now, and just want to point out how instrumental he is. I get to present it and get whatever credit there is for it, but the real hard work's being done by Brian and by Jamie and their staff. So, Mr. Mayor, moving on to comments, like to announce to the city commission publicly that when Congress and President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act to provide stimulus to everyone and help to residents of the United States, they also included all local governments, cities. Every city in the United States is receiving funding. We received correspondence that our funding, that Newberry is going to receive $2.6 million as part of this COVID funding effort. And I can tell you that, like we were talking about with Alachua County, BOCC, there was a referendum passed, but not quite sure how it's going to roll out. Congress passed an act, the president enacted it into law. We're still not quite sure how it's going to roll out. We do know that we're going to receive the funding in 2 payments. We'll get half of it here in about 6 weeks, into May, I think. And the second half will come 12 months later. We have conflicting reports on the amount of restrictions that of what could be done with the water. With the funding. So we know that there are some limitations on the funding, but we're not going to have a really great idea on what can be done with the funding probably for another 4 weeks. That information is trickling out of Washington, D.C. right now. So we propose that probably the earliest that we'd be able to give you a full report on that would be early in May. And if I could presuppose, I don't, my experience with the commission is they rarely go out on shopping sprees. So my guess is that whatever we get, staff is going to recommend that we just consider it through the budget process, how the commission might like to spend that funding as we go through our regular budget process and just make it a more of a comprehensive budgeting process. But it's pretty exciting news to know that you're going to get a $2.6 million check. Although, all of us also know that, well, somebody's eventually got to make payment on that fronting of money, but it's coming, and just want to make commission and the community aware. Mr. Mayor, just last week was Florida. The Florida legislative delegation is in session now and have been for about 4 weeks. Last week was the special week, Florida League of Cities delegation week. So rather than travel to Tallahassee like we normally do, because the legislature is pretty much on lockdown, although I know if you've got enough clout, you might could get in the door. I understand our mayor has that kind of clout, but I was asked to keep my hiney in Newberry, and we just zoom in. So I met with Senator Perry, I met with with Representative Clemens. We talked about our biggest priority being funding for an appropriation for our wastewater extension. They were both very pleased with how much work has been done to date. As you know, we started construction on that. Well, we were authorized to start construction a few weeks ago. I think this week we will actually start construction. So we're looking for about $1 million in funding for the force main to complete that project. Both Senator Perry and Representative Clemens told me that that was their highest appropriation priority this session. We also talked about funding for the FDOT twin pairs. It's a project that's going to happen, but there's funding is not planned in the 5-year cycle. The report we got back on that is that the MCORS project, which is to build an interstate down the West Coast, is stagnating. Looks like it may not continue to be funded, and that there's a strong push to take the funding that was going to that and move it to projects that are currently underway elsewhere in the state. So we have a big hope that we're going to get funded sooner than later. And my recommendation with all new variants is that we keep it on the forefront of DOT and our legislative delegation, that as soon as the design is complete, we want to immediately move into construction. Mr. Mayor, we asked this commission that we put forward funding of the jobs growth grant, which hasn't been funded for the last 2 years. The governor recommends that we fund it at double the previous levels, 150 million versus the 80 that it had previously been funded. And I think he's recommended that they use some of their American Rescue Plan Act funding to fund the jobs growth grant. That would be very good for Newberry. And finally, the regional wastewater treatment plant, that's on everybody's mind in Tallahassee. They are working to see that concept come to reality in Newberry. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to take a bit more time than I have the last few meetings. I hope I've wanted the commission to be aware. Lift station number 26, which is the one out on State Road 26, is beginning construction this week. We were authorized to begin. It's about $500,000 worth of work. So that is getting started now. Lift station 1, which is over by the high school, is wrapping up. So we're going to do our final testing, and then we'll get the road paved back there. We'll put that puppy in service, and we'll call that a done project. And that is a huge project. I would say that 80% or more of any of the wastewater releases into the environment that we have come from that one lift station. And once this is complete, I would say it'll be a rare day before we see that. We've got a very deep wet well. We've got a very large wet well, and we've got a backup generator. So that all of the reasons that we previously had releases have been addressed. Jamie and his team have done a terrific job both with the design and with construction. AMI deployment is ramping up. We're having meetings every week. I think we will probably be ordering meters. Already ordered, or next week we'll be issuing orders. Our construction team is already working to put things in place for it. I think we're on a 4-month deployment time track. So we'll, beginning in May, we'll probably give a 10-minute presentation once a month to the city commission, kind of let you know where things are. Again, public engagement is a huge part of what we're doing. We've hired a firm to help us get the word out. Our contractor has certain contractual obligations to help us get the word out. We're expecting a very successful deployment. Mr. Mayor, I want to report that the Swanee River Water Management District Lands Committee, which is not the final stop, but voted to convey 60 acres of property that they own next to our Easton Newberry Sports Center to the city of Newberry. It'll be on the agenda for the full board in April. If it's approved there, and we expect that it will be, then we'll start working on closing and making that happen. That's at no cost to the city. The city has made a sizable investment already in that property, and the board recognizes that. And their last act is intended to be, they're going to timber it sometime, and then they're going to convey it to us with a lot of strings attached. It's going to have to stay a well field in perpetuity. And if the city loses sight of that responsibility, then there'll be a reverter clause and we'll go back to the water management district. But I don't think the city would lose that. But getting control of that property is very important to the city. It helps us move forward a lot of our recreation plans. I met with Sheriff Watson last week to discuss law enforcement. That's a very preliminary conversation, so I'll continue to keep the board abreast of that. Asked for a meeting with FDOT to discuss the Twin Pairs Road project, get an update on that, and as soon as I find out something from them, I will get something to the board. Mr. Mayor, I will be out of the office and out of the country the week of April the 12th. So I'll be missing that commission meeting, and we're going to load it up with all sorts of fun and challenging things. But we will have somebody, since I will be unavailable by cell phone, I anticipate we will appoint one of our senior staff to be in charge of city operations in my absence. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to remind the commission that we are having a joint meeting with the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners scheduled for April the 26th at 7 p.m. our place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my comments.
Mike, the FDOT turn lane around 15. When's
Yes.
that scheduled
That
to
is,
start?
Mr. Mayor, that is scheduled to go to construction in the fall.
Fall, okay.
And Mr. Mayor, we pressed really hard to get the crosswalk done ahead of time. And I've at least got email correspondence from FDOT that they intend to do that.
That would be wonderful. It'd be great to get the project done in the summer before school starts, but we'll take what we can get. Thank you. That include your comments?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Attorney?
A new little baby joining the Folds Walker Maltby family. Andrea's expecting. She's just finishing up her first trimester, and she's gonna have another little boy to
Wow.
join her other little boy that she's
All
got.
right.
So-
Awesome.
And just
We'll
for
tell her
those that are,
congratulations.
I will tell her that. I'll be glad to pass along. FSU beat Colorado 71-50, I believe it was. So for those that might be interested.
Scott, before you turn off your microphone, we've got a lot of concern in Newberry about a potential emergency order that the county is going to consider tomorrow.
Heard a little bit about it. I haven't seen the draft yet.
Can you just confirm that Newberry's resolution keeps us out of the fray? We're continuing to follow the governor's order and change our order to concur with the governor's order. So whatever the county does tomorrow affects the county, affects any municipality that has not opted out of that. But Newberry's emergency order is in line with the governor's order.
That's what our emergency order and resolution said exactly that, Mr. Mayor. So,
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
yes.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have an update on our 2021 municipal election that is scheduled to be held on Tuesday, April the 13th. We are still receiving requests for vote by mail ballots. We encourage you to do that either in person, via the phone, or our website. The ballots have been ordered. We expect to receive them hopefully at the end of this week. We will have one race on that ballot, and that is Group 4 with incumbent Commissioner Tim Martin and Joy Glanzer. The canvassing board is scheduled to meet on Tuesday, April the 6th at 2 p.m. For the logistics and accuracy testing of the voting equipment that will be used in our election. So the public is encouraged to attend. It is a public meeting, and it should take about a half hour or so. So if anyone has any questions regarding or inquiries regarding our election, please contact the city clerk's office. And we'd be happy to answer your questions or walk you through the vote by mail process on our city's website or any other issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Judy. And I want to compliment you and your department on all the updates to our website. I recently was grilled about some information about the election and why it wasn't on the website and where was it. And I went to the website before I even contacted you. I was able to find every single item that the person was asking me why it wasn't on the website in less than 45 seconds.
Right.
It was all on the website. We did, and I could find the information through multiple routes. So thank you for making that ease of access. And even after all of that, you made one more change to make it even more accessible and more easy to find. So I do appreciate you and your team for making those changes. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, Commissioner, let's start down over here today. Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Farnsworth, Commissioner Norfleet. It seems like I had a bunch of stuff, but it all went right out of my head. So we'll move straight to public comment. Public comment. Come on down. Don't be shy. And if you are watching at home, go ahead and dial in. That'll get you in the meeting. Hit that little symbol at the bottom and we'll get you queued up. Now you're. Actually, there's the green light on the microphone. That's your timer light.
There's me.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Mayor, commissioners, good evening. Lisa Tate, citizen. I'm not sure whether this is more of a comment or a question or in terms of the FDOT, and I know we kind of briefly touched on them this evening. Are they keeping in good communication? Do you feel like with the commission and the city as to what they're doing? And what their phases are. Case in point is last Friday, we had FDOT equipment come onto our private property and drill, I don't even know what it is, a 2-foot pipe, a well, something, and without any contact of us. My husband texted me at work because he thought maybe I knew about it. So, when it was Friday, when the city's offices were closed, there was nobody to contact. We found it Friday afternoon, and I'm just not sure, Okay. Well, I know I reached out to a couple of you and I just didn't know, if that was the mechanism to do that. We were just really startled and we have contacted them, just the contact of the gentleman who came and did some of the presentations. And I see that he's forwarded us on to who knows what, but our first reaction was like, we need to fence that property. And I certainly don't want to go the expense because we have other plans for it. And when we shared that to him, that they were writing it or, picturing it to be a catch basin, he indicated to us that they would move that because he knew we have some commercial designs there for, and that'll be the westbound lane and that'll be some prime property. So I just any feedback, any guidance, any, I appreciate being able to reach out to you guys and
Well, I think the answer to your question is that besides for the incident that we followed the email back and forth, we've had very good communication up until this point. And I saw the last correspondence was that FDOT is going to open up an investigation to find out what happened. So I would say we've been part of this process now for 2 years, maybe 3, 4. This is the first time we've had that kind of incident. So I'm hoping that this is a one-off, that somebody got something wrong, missed a step, because it hasn't happened before. I'm certainly apologetic that it happened to you guys. But in a 4-year process of this magnitude, to have one incident of a miscommunication, I would say that's a fairly good track record. And it, as I followed the email thread, they responded really quickly and opened up an investigation. So I'll personally will wait to see the outcome of that investigation.
Absolutely, and that was ours as well.
And see what they have to say about how that happened and how it occurred. But this is the first time that I've heard about any communication issue. In fact, if you go back to the beginning of this, which you can see it's 4 years ago, they have gone above and beyond when it comes to communicating, to the point of walking up and down the street, putting door knockers on people's doors who they were having trouble getting in contact with, just to make sure they were part of the process and that they were communicating. So hopefully that's a resolution.
The other part of just bringing it to your attention, because you would know if there were other people who were having similar issues. And, I certainly wouldn't hear those complaints unless they're brought up publicly.
Sure.
So, all right.
Well, we're sorry that it happened to you, and hopefully it's a one-off.
Hopefully. The last thing I will just mention is just a reminder again that the Newberry Main Street has decided to have the Spring Festival. It will be May 1st on Saturday, May Day, Spring Fling. A lot of interest, just backed by popular demand. We weren't sure if we were going to do it, but we are, and it looks like we're going to have a lot of people interested. It's the same day as a farmer's market. So that's even, just kind of double nice we'll try to get as many of the businesses open down there and just see if we can get some good traffic downtown.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys for doing that. Okay, other public comment. Come on down, sir. We appreciate you
Hello.
making it all the way here to the end. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
I'm Kevin Tharp. Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm here on behalf of family and residents who live down Northwest 266th Street in West Newberry, also known as Holder Grade. I'm coming on their behalf and mine to request that asphalt milling be put on that road. Because as anybody that has been down that road, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Norfleet, Tony in the back, it's 5 miles of pure bouncing roughness. The city will tell you that they maintain it, but once every 4 weeks, 5 weeks, they do grade it. But the 3, 4, 5 weeks in between there is just sometimes dangerous. I would submit that the population and traffic patterns warrant it. I've lived here forever and I've seen all the little dirt roads around here get that except ours. It's just very rough at times. And quite honestly, somebody could run off the road. It gets that rough. I think the money that will be saved by doing this would eventually pay for itself, because you don't have to have dump trucks bringing lime rock, you know, the grading and then the man hours that it takes to upkeep the thing. So that's pretty much what I'm here for. What I waited for was to see if you would entertain that idea. I think it would eventually pay for itself. And I'm not sure if this was the right format to do it, but I figured I would present it and see where we go from here.
So there's always the right format to come and address this directly yourself. That's always what I encourage people to do. I will let you know that we have extensive, as you saw tonight, plans on all of the roads in town. So we have gone through and diagnosed each one for its need. We've tried to figure out a plan for chip sealing, our paving, our increased maintenance. So we are aware of those issues. They kind of fluctuate with the weather, as I'm sure that you know about. And I can absolutely guarantee you that yours is not the only road in that condition. That we've done very little chip sealing. Most of the chip seal roads that you see were actually done by the county on county roads. City of Newberry hasn't invested in chip sealing very much. I think there's about 1.5 miles of road that the city of Newberry has chip sealed. All the other roads you see that are chip sealed were done at our county roads, and they did the chip sealing. So we are looking at it, and I'm not, you know, we were really close in this last budget season to addressing it. However, it always, those kinds of requests are always best made in budget season because it's a budgetary allocation. And that's when you would want to come and make that presentation. So I wanted to take the time, since you waited all night long, to let you know, we spent a lot of time thinking about the roads here and our maintenance level of them. And I'll certainly ask Jamie to speak to our maintenance cycle on that road. Last year, we upgraded how much lime rock we were putting on all the roads, which seemed to help on some of them. But I would also say to you that right after our municipal elections, about a month, 6 weeks after, is when we start thinking about budget workshops. We'll start releasing calendar dates. And I would encourage you to come back to the commission and continue to advocate, because in the middle of budget season, that's when you'll get these guys to say, make a line item. We want you to do this on that road. It's hard for them to do it outside of the budget season because we don't have a line item to fund it. So while you're standing there, I know we're paused time, but let me just ask Jamie. Can you tell us a little bit about our maintenance schedule on that road?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Barring any weather issues, we grade on a 3-week cycle. We have extended a good bit of rock at the commission's request, and the commission has budgeted a good bit of rock for the past 2 budget years. I believe we were all the way down past the 8th lane segment, and we're slated for another round on that road, probably May.
And then finally, I would say that one thing that any neighborhood has the option to do is to band together and I'm forgetting the name of it, Mike, when a neighborhood wants to come together and create an area, special assessment area. And basically what that means is that you get your neighbors to band together and the city pays up front, and then we distribute it in your tax bill over some number of years. And that is a quick way. If you guys say, we want a chip seal road and we're willing to pay for it, you guys come together and we can help figure out what that would look like for each property owner. So we've always offered that when neighborhoods come together and they want something, speed humps, speed tables, chip seal road. So that is another option that you can go back to your neighbors and discuss. I know you have some neighbors down there that are adamantly opposed to a chip seal road. So you may have to work on building uniformity.
Well, I would think all the heirs would outrule the nayers
Yeah.
in this. Why two people could overrule 40
Yeah.
is beyond me.
Well, then that would be something for your neighborhood to figure out. So,
Well,
but
it's
we'll
mostly
make sure that
family, so
we.
I'm sure I could get them all down here if y'all
Yeah.
have room.
So, well, I mean, I think that during budget season is when we should get, if you'll leave the contact information in the back, I'll make it,
Well, I
put
just
sure it's
heard
on my
there's 2.7
calendar.
million coming, so.
Yeah. All right, Commissioner Norfleet.
We discussed that road a little bit back during the budget season, and if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Manager, that road's kind of cut up with the city and the county having jurisdictions over, which made some issues on maintaining that because of the county.
I'm building it and I just paid permits and impact fees to the city of Newberry.
Yeah.
So I live at the end of it. So as far as I'm concerned, my money's going to Newberry.
That's right. And a lot of ours is too, but the county gets they're wanting the city to take over all the roads, even though there's some segmented property on that road that's still in the county. And, they're not wanting to give up any money that they allocate towards roads to the city and want the city to pay for them roads completely on their own. And I think the county needs to give up allocated money for some of these private roads that the cities are maintaining. There's a mutual agreement between the city and the county that, for grading and rock and stuff, but it doesn't nowhere close to cover that. But we discussed earlier in the budget year about putting asphalt down on some of these outlying.
I'm not even asking for that. I'm just asking for that milling, something, cut down the bounce, the washboard, the potholes.
That road sucks.
Because it does. Because eventually, I don't know how you want to put it out with the county or the city. Somebody's going to run off the road and find someone negligent. I mean, and you're going to have these money hungry lawyers trying to get money. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've had a family member to do that.
We appreciate you, sir. Thank you for coming and addressing us
Thank you
tonight.
for your time.
And don't forget to put it on your agenda to come back during budget season.
Who do I leave my contact?
We have a sheet of paper back there.
Okay.
Dallas, can you just hand him a pen and piece of paper? We used to have a sheet of paper back there. If not, you can find any of us on the website on email. Just email it to me and I'll make sure we remind you.
Mr. Mayor, and I'll just, since Mr. Thought began speaking, Jamie transmitted 4 different statistical things. We actually did some trip counts on those roads. So that road, to Commissioner Norfleet's point, is jointly owned. The city owns segments, the county owns segments. There's pockets of unincorporated up and down it. But we all know that even if it's fully incorporated on either side of the road, that the county can still own it. But so we know trip data, we understand cost to chip seal and pave, and would be very happy to sit down and share our data with Mr. Thorpe and talk with him about alternatives and potentially a special assessment or our budget schedule for when we're going to present these things in our budget meetings.
Absolutely. And when I said that we've done that study, that's exactly what we can tell you at this point. Trip counts for every road in Newberry, the state that it's in, the plan, those kinds of things. And our real struggle is most of these roads, we don't own the whole road. So I understand that's really, really tough for residents who are annexed into Newberry, but the road and your property, two different entities, and the county owns the road, and it could have people in Newberry on both sides of it, just like the state of Florida owns Newberry Road, right, all the way through. We don't have any power or control over parking spaces on that road. All of that is done at the state level, even though for the most part, city of Newberry residents and city of Newberry property are on both sides of it. So it gets really, really complex, but we are aware and we're working to try to figure out what to do. It's a $7 million price tag for us to pave every road that the city owns in the city of Newberry. And the BOCC, the county, has a stated policy on their dais that they're not spending $1 to maintain any of their roads inside municipalities. So I would encourage you not to stop with us. Send an email to the BOCC and say, I live on a road that you own a section of, and I'd like you to consider maintaining it better. So that will get us as partners. Any other public comments in the room? Now, do we have any virtual hands raised?